consumes stories and maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
It is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025, the 1456th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. 1456 is a big, big number for days of dystopia. It is almost the last number. It should be 1460 total, but there's always overtime. Maybe we'll get into some overtime. We'll find out on Monday, I guess, or maybe we'll find out earlier. Maybe something will happen. Maybe something will happen. And we're going to talk about maybe something happening very briefly in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about more fakery. We talked about the surprise party on, what was it, Monday. And then I talked about it a bit last night with my friend Burning Bright on our show, Badlands Story Hour. And you may have earlier in the day today seen a clip that I pulled from that. I'm, funny enough, losing. There we are. Trying to grab that clip back. I know I had it. So the surprise party works this way. This is how we laid it out. So there's a couple. The woman is throwing her husband or boyfriend, or man throwing his girlfriend, wife, whatever. A surprise birthday party. So we have the surpriser, we have the surprised, and then we have all the guests. All the guests are invited. They're going to come to the surprise birthday. At the arranged time, the surprised will arrive, and then all the guests will jump out and say, "Aren't you surprised?" And they'll say, "Yes, I am quite surprised." Except what often happens with surprise birthday parties is someone finds out that they are about to be the star of a surprise birthday party. They'll be at work and the person will say, "Hey, I'll see you, Friday afternoon at the bar." when the surprise party is supposed to be, and the surprised will immediately realize, oh wait, someone has planned something. I'm going to be surprised in this place. And then they might tell a person or two. And so there's a number of people at the surprise birthday party, particularly the person who's supposed to be surprised, who will not be surprised. They know what's happening. The person who is being surprised is no longer surprised, and other people who are meant to do the surprising already know they're not going to be surprising anyone, but they play along anyway. And that is what we often have in real life with some of these events, some of these false flag events. And we talked about this example last night from Jake Sullivan.
One last word, which is, I hope this is my last time at this podium, at least for a little while. I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, the only thing that would bring me back is an unexpected event in the next few days, which, as you all know, is totally possible given everything you've seen over the course of the past years. But if it is, in fact, my last time before you, I just want to say thank you for what you guys do every day.
Blah, 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 blah. So is Jake Sullivan suggesting that there might be some sort of event within the next few days? Maybe there will be. Maybe there will be. And he's right, of course. The last 4 years have been totally unpredictable. That's why no one has predicted them. He's basically announcing a false flag, and a false flag operates very much like a surprise birthday party. Everybody who is the guest to the false flag / surprise birthday party event thinks that they are engaged in a real event. And when they yell surprise, the surprised will be surprised, and hence a surprise birthday party has been had. But if that person already knows, and the inviter, the surpriser in chief, is aware that the surprised already knows, then what they're doing is having everyone simply act the scene out as though it's real, so that they can monitor the reactions of the people who aren't in on the trick. At the top level, it is only a trick, right? There is no mystery up there as to whether or not the person is going to be surprised. It's impossible to surprise that person. But everyone else can be, and they can experience it as real. Now, if they know already, if the surprised tells a couple of the guests, hey, I already know about this thing, but I hope you come and we'll get to see each other. We'll have fun. Well, those guys know now that everybody else at the party is going to be tricked while they are in on the trick. And maybe the surprise is like, hey guys, first round of beers is on me if you just keep your mouth shut about this. Okay. And now we have the essential relationship between politicians at a higher level and politicians at a much lower level, who are involved somehow in pulling this ruse on everyone else. And they will stand to benefit some marginal degree from that. Okay, so we talked about that example on Monday and then discussed it a little more last night. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who has a Hollywood experience that at least in the kind of our social circles and activities had some rough similarities. We had knowledge of the same parts of the Hollywood lifestyle in some respect. So I said, hey, you remember this time in, maybe it was like the 2006 to 2010 period. It could be a little earlier, a little later, a little longer, a little shorter, but I think it was about that. 2, 3, 4 years, second half of that decade. There began to be this phenomenon where when you would go out to a nightclub, particular nightclubs, of course, in one part of the nightclub, they would be filming an episode of a reality show. And so they would have an area of the club's VIP sections. Most places would have either one, or they would have a few spread apart with different vibes and experiences throughout a venue. I remember there was the one I think probably did it the most, at least at first, was this place called Ladue that would have the reality show The Hills filming there all the time. And they would always have the same table, like this owner's table, always on the same night of the week. And over there, they would be filming scenes for the show. They would be filming people interacting as though their interactions were real, and they were somewhat spontaneous, but mostly scripted. You're going to talk about this, and then you're going to respond this way because you know how this has been going on and this has been going on. Well, you know, I think you're probably not going to like this one. So maybe there's some tension there that you guys want to explore, that kind of thing. That's what a reality show is. Okay. It's not a window into real people's lives. It is a commercial for a sort of lifestyle. And it's supposed to make you long for what the television characters have while feeling that your life is somewhat similar to theirs. You have a personal bond and a personal connection. Okay, so at some point in the night, you know, the crew would have already had their stuff set up, or, you know, sometimes maybe they just came right in because they were following them around town. I think it was probably more like that for the most part. But they would come on in, lights would go up, they'd be in this corner, bottle service and everything, like they were big club VIPs. It would all go over there, everything on film. And then they would proceed to do their scenes. They would have different conversations. It would be this person or that person's birthday party. There would be some celebration. They would have these special guests, whoever was in town. Oh my gosh, it's this person's friend, this guy. And so what you have is a scene that will be shown on television of real people playing a characterized version of themselves, simulating a real scene that has commonalities with their actual life, but is nonetheless scripted, that they will spontaneously act out in kind of an emotional back and forth that is already designed. Okay. And then if you step out one level from that, they are being displayed on TV as partying while at a real party. But in the eyes of everyone else at the real party, they are simulating partying. And they know they are simulating partying because what they're actually doing is filming a scene, and all of them know they're filming a scene. None of them are confused about partying rather than filming a scene. Now, some of them are maybe just along for the ride, and they're mostly there to party, but they still know that they're filming a scene, and so they will act in accordance with the fact that they are filming a scene. And then, of course, there are people around in the club that would rather be filming a scene than partying. So those people will all be gathered around the area that is being filmed, making it seem like the people being filmed are at an even bigger party, while all the partiers will be trying to be part of the thing that's being filmed. Okay. And then you can glide all the way back into the minds of the characters. And at some point, if they are drinking in the scenes, which of course they are, they might actually be starting to kind of lose track of the cameras, and they're enjoying the engagement that they're having, and they're enjoying having some drinks. And then all of a sudden they will feel like maybe they're really partying. And then is it a real party or is it a fake party? Are certain people partying and certain people not partying? Does it go back and forth? It's certainly a fake party in the eyes of the people who know it's being filmed, and it's a film production being filmed. The producers of the show, the editors, whoever's going to deal with that, marketing people, whatever, in the future, will never think of what they're watching as a party. They'll watch it as a series of scenes composing a television show that they are going to send out onto air, and people will either watch it or they won't. They'll respond well, or they'll respond poorly, or they'll not care at all. And so you have a real thing and a fake thing totally intermingled to the point that the lines between them get really, really blurry. But here's the thing. That might be really complicated to figure out if you had to always be right in one direction about each and every aspect, all right? It would be impossible. You can barely make it through all the iterations as I just described. And you got to remember there's 400 different perspectives in the outdoor patio of this nightclub where the scene would be filmed. So who knows how many permutations of that there are. But you have the real thing and the fake thing right next to one another, totally intermingled and indistinguishable. But in a zero trust environment, understanding total fog of war and that all our information is unreliable, do you step forward and make a positive claim about what you know? This is this way, this is this way, this is this way, this is this way, this is this way. Or do you say, well, I can see that this problem is imbued with levels of fakery and dishonesty that are absolutely impermeable. So I am going to step back and step back and step back and take this from the highest perspective possible, which, you know, in this case would be the film producers and the people working with the finished product, for instance, of this television show. To them, it's just a television show. Okay. And so I understand that there are real experiences happening at every point in that chain, but from the top level, it's just a television show. And since we can't inhabit the mind or the perspective of God, then we should at least try to see what this thing is in toto, in reality, for us. That seems to make the most sense for me. And at that point, then you cannot deny the fact that part or virtually all of this scenario is fake. And therefore, you can't just go responding to every bit of it as real, especially if the only response is emotion, complicity, and obedience. I hope that makes some more sense above and beyond what I've talked about over the past couple of days. Shannon Bach, now a monthly supporter. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody still seems to be on board. Nobody being like, what the hell is he talking about? Okay, wonderful. Let us continue. Okay, so I say all this first to deal with Jake Sullivan's announcement of a potential false flag. Now, is Jake Sullivan actually announcing a potential false flag? What does it mean to announce that something is potential? A warning? A way to wash your hands of responsibility in some way because I said, hey, I told you it could happen. It's confusing in this respect, certainly. Jake Sullivan may not know, does not know. I mean, first of all, let's back up one more step, okay? Jake Sullivan does not work for a real administration, and that's not a real press conference. Jake Sullivan is putting out public messaging in the middle of an information operation, and decisions about false flags and the communications about those false flags won't be, that's not stuff that's going to be generated by Jake Sullivan so much as it will be information communicated through Jake Sullivan. So Jake Sullivan's role in that regard is not that interesting. Will there be a false flag? Jake Sullivan is not deciding. And a hint there, a warning, a calm to their people. Hey, I know you've been asking for something disruptive. We've got something disruptive. Just chill out, wait for it, see what it is. Now, let me make sure someone commenting on Truth Social was correct about this. He said that, and indeed he is correct, that Martin Luther King Day this year is Monday, January 20th. So the same day as inauguration. Wow. Imagine they wanted to pull a racial stunt, a racial false flag. Fake news is future history. Put this one down in the storybooks for all time. The Martin Luther King Day resistance to Orange Hitler Donald Trump. I don't know that's going to happen, but I can imagine from the viewpoint of the people who write these sorts of things that that's got a decent ring to it. That's something you can sell in a newspaper 50 years from now or 100 years from now. And gosh, with people's attention spans 10 weeks from now, these are the kinds of stories I think that they want to make. If that sort of thing happens, I think it will be some support for the ideas that I have expressed over the past few weeks about what's going on here broadly. Let's see how we want to line this up. That's that. So I've been paying some attention, not a ton, but some attention to these Senate hearings that we've had over the past couple of days. The Senate, of course, is totally illegitimate, but we've had hearings for now. Pete Hegseth yesterday, that was Fox News battling MSNBC, both from the actor level at Pete Hegseth's level and the senators at that level. It's Fox News. Literally, Pete Hegseth is a Fox News TV character, and MSNBC, because uniparty politicians are also uniparty TV characters, many or most of whom perform on MSNBC. Certainly all the Democrats, and then people like Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney, and then you've even got some others, you know, Susan Collins and the like, who are just obvious rhinos. And then at the higher level, you have Fox News and MSNBC trying to convince everybody that this is a really important event happening in the country, these hearings. Everybody's got to be watching this. We've all got to be tuned in. Fox News hosts, and even like, you know, those kind of mainstream normie Q influencer accounts. It's so weird that they just like normie post with kind of Q branding, and that's a whole thing. They were screaming, trying to enforce conformity yesterday, that everybody would be out there posting online as hard as possible for Pete Hegseth to win his hearings, to perform really well in his hearings. Now, I'm fine if Pete Hegseth performs really well. I got no problem with Pete Hegseth. Do I think he's going to be our defense, our Secretary of Defense? I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen with the Department of War. I don't know what's going to happen with a lot of the federal agencies that should not exist anymore, all making up, you know, the fantasy team among all their appointments. Trump has totally drained the cast of Fox News for these appointments to offices that cannot and should not constitutionally exist, and for which there is no need. I don't expect many of these appointments to last very long in the administration. The longer they last will be the proof of how long this op must continue, because everybody is too addicted to the soap opera. So we were watching Fox News and MSNBC try to convince everybody to watch television again. This is the important thing. These hearings are important because these TV characters will be the ones responsible for tearing down the deep state. Sure, Donald Trump will be there, but these are the ones really doing the work. And they were asking Hegseth questions about like what his political opinions were. Like it was, I don't know, the sort of, it would be like watching 60 Minutes or Sean Hannity interview a politician during a campaign. Hey, what do you think about abortion? Well, what does that matter? Pete Hegseth is going to the extent he's going to be Secretary of Defense, he's going to be in there implementing Donald Trump's policies and managing the organization as the executive. That's it. He's not going to be expressing his political opinions. He's going to be doing a job. And of course, everything has to be political because what they're actually doing is attempting to create viral content. Okay. So there may be people in the gallery who believe that they are watching a real Senate hearing with a legitimate Senate asking real questions to a real nominee, and the nominee's answers to the senator's questions has some bearing on whether or not that nominee will be approved to become part of Donald Trump's administration. Donald Trump really doesn't need to ask for their permission, and he certainly doesn't need a vote. If any of them want to not consent, then they should just stand up and declare that they do not consent to the person going in. Let's get straight to it. Advise and consent. Do you not consent? Fine, raise your objection. But they're not raising objections. They are repeating stories in the fake news from a few weeks ago as though they were all proven true, and Pete Hegseth is guilty of a crime. So to the extent that they believe they're participating in a real thing, they're still doing it on false premises that they know to be false. Susan Collins went through a series of questions, or not even went through a series of questions. She went through a long soliloquy on the Havana syndrome in her interrogation of John Ratcliffe, and she read it all off a card. Are we supposed to pretend that Susan Collins knows something important about Havana syndrome? It sounded like she was just executing an information op for the CIA, pushing a fake news story. I don't know if Havana syndrome is fake news or not, okay? I could imagine that they want to cut off some other disclosure, whether it's about energy weapons or something else, by presenting the entire thing as a massive problem and major health concern to the public before the other disclosure comes out, so that people will have, so that people will react backwards to it, right? React in an already inverted fashion because they've already had certain narratives seeded. I can imagine that. But the idea that Susan Collins is some kind of authority on Havana syndrome seems preposterous. So she is, in fact, asking other people's questions. And they're all asking other people's questions. And you've even got Adam Schiff in there, who's committed crimes against the country, is in the Senate because of a fake election. He was brought into the Senate early, and now he is asking questions about the fake news that he planted 8 years ago. So how many levels of fakery are we dealing with in the hearings? It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. And again, none of them, of course, have been legitimately elected. And I believe that it was Kamala who swore them in. There's no authority there to do that. Did someone else do it? Maybe. Are some of them legitimate? I guess it's possible. I don't really see how. I don't see how it's possible that any of them are legitimate. And that's going to have to be resolved. You know what? That makes me want to get to something from yesterday, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it quickly enough to be able to do it. But man, oh man, Bannon was good yesterday. Let me see here. Oh, there were a couple of things. This one I'm going to mention later. You might have heard me mention it on Badlands Story Hour last night. That one's important. Hold for processing. I really do like this. So if I'm able to find it quickly on YouTube, then which means I can effectively scan the transcript. Steve Bannon did an interview with Politico, and I would highly recommend that interview to everyone. I thought it was extremely interesting listening to Steve Bannon lay down how it is and how it's going to be is something I enjoy very much, because you can call me crazy if you like, and maybe you'll be right. But I believe that Steve Bannon is very much in the know about a number of important subjects. Okay. Great. So let's start here. Steve is talking about Susie Wiles versus John Kelly and the difference in style and how they're going to interact with President Trump, who kind of knows how to do things his own way and just wants to hear from everybody and manage the ideas around him in kind of more of an open and decentralized space, rather than getting information directly from the authoritative source, assuming that's the only thing that matters, and then saying yes or no to the authoritative source, and it's your job to decide how it wants. These are totally different ideas. One of them is the centralized fashion. One of them is the decentralized fashion. And operating in a decentralized information environment where you hear an unlimited variety of perspectives is obviously the best way to analyze the information that is available and hopefully then make the best decisions. That's why I try to proceed that way in as much as I can. And Bannon, I think, is much closer to the head of that stream, let's say. Okay. I don't know that he has the president's ear on a day-to-day basis, but I feel reasonably assured that he is still very much involved at some high level and understands the long-term plan. And the people he interacts with and has on the show, I think that it's not a hard sell. If you don't believe that, you know, I'm not going to try to convince you, obviously, but I think you'd be missing something in that case. Anyhow, this is from Bannon yesterday in the Politico interview. Listen to what he says about the elections.
President Trump's President Trump. You know, he's in his 70s now. He's got a house style. And one thing people should know, he's always trying to get input from a wide variety of people. People who the public doesn't even know, just to bounce ideas off him. He's always seeing how it plays in the room. He's very good at judging what people are thinking and where the country's going. This is one of his superpowers. And so and I think Susie's smart enough, because you've seen so already on the campaign and so far in the transition. She doesn't try to go John Kelly on you. She doesn't try to hermetically seal the president, because he can't be hermetically sealed. Particularly now, given that he knows 2020 was stolen, he came back in 2021. In those first couple of dark years when even Rupert Murdoch said we're going to make him a non-person, President Trump has gone up the learning curve of confidence in his own judgment and confidence in policies and also people that will have his back. So there's still going to be total access, I think, at one level with President Trump, because this is just the way, this is his house style. I think she is going to have a little more management, so it's maybe not quite so chaotic at the staff level. Although I will say, particularly in that first year, all the benefits of the economy and foreign policy, the peace and prosperity of 19, those seeds were sown with Reince Priebus and the team, with all the fighting that went on. They were all sown in 2017. That's why this first 100 the days of thunder next week, the first 100 days, the first 6 months, and the first year, to me, are everything in this, because the seeds of peace and prosperity that President Trump is dedicated to bring back, it's all going to be sown there. That will all be where it's either sown or where it's not sown. And so that's where this fight the next year is going to be so intense.
Now, to be clear, I know this has been slipped in a couple of times. There's been no evidence of widespread fraud in 2020, but I don't want to look back. Let's keep looking forward.
Hang on.
I know this has been slipped in a couple of times. It's like, I can't let you get away with saying that 2020 was stolen. They still won't do it. And they always say, let's not try to relitigate the past. Let's look forward to the future. This is really a conversation about the future. Don't you really want to have a conversation about the future? The American people, they're concerned about the future. They want to have a conversation about the future. The conversation about the future starts in 2020 and then begins backwards from there.
Hang on. Ho. Look at Jack Smith's. There's no thing of widespread fraud. Please hang on, Basher. I understand you've got a legal thing you have to do. I appreciate that. But why is the J6 committee having people go to the White House and beg for blanket preemptive pardons? Right? Why is Jack Smith and his team quitting early and also talking to people about pardons? This has to be.
Well, they're worried about political persecution in the same way that you have claimed that that's an issue.
Hey, if they just thought it was political persecution, they wouldn't be worried. They're worried. This has to be totally adjudicated. You have to adjudicate 2020. You have to adjudicate J6. You have to adjudicate the vast criminal conspiracy against President Trump. And on this one, we're absolutely adamant. President Trump needs to do this for this country, not for himself. You see last night, the Jack Smith thing's a nothing burger. Total nothing burger.
Well, look, see, President Trump himself has said he wants to look to the future. So let's keep doing that, because otherwise we're going to get off the rails real fast here.
President Trump does want to look to the future. He says his retribution will be peace and prosperity. That doesn't mean that some of his colleagues that understand what they not just tried to do to him, but did to this country has to be adjudicated. And this is going to be a big effort, I think, of people trying to get President Trump on board to do that. Like I said, President Trump is not a vindictive person. President Trump is not someone that looks for revenge, but we need to do this for the country. And you should know there are elements of President Trump's coalition that are absolutely adamant that this has to be done. This weaponization has to be taken out root and branch from this government.
So you say he's not a vindictive person, but you do want to see.
So Bannon's still all about 2020, not going anywhere, not going anywhere. It's never going anywhere. All of Con Inc. is going to die on this very hill. They have tried to stave off the 2020 discussion, the fact that our elections are fake discussion now for well over 4 years. The most based and red-pilled out there still not prepared to actually adjudicate 2020. What will happen? What will happen? They've lied about elections now for 4 straight years, every year, making sure that elections are doubled down and tripled down on, blaming election losses in fake elections on MAGA. 2022's red wave, bye-bye, MAGA. That's your fault. For Dr. Oz, as we watched him get beaten by the Fetterman. Even the Frankenstein version of the Fetterman beat Dr. Oz. It was also silly. Katie Hobbs in her walking boot beat Carrie Lake. And they just went dutifully along with it. By the way, just to point this out, thought it was kind of funny. Bannon, Days of Thunder, Badlands Story Hour, 6 weeks ago, Days of Thunder. How about that? Dig it. I love Steve Bannon. He mentioned Jack Smith there. We can mention that quickly here as well. Let me see, where do I have it? This is a Trump lawyer named Dave Schoen. I think he was one of the impeachment guys last year. And so this is the man that they, for some reason, call the Great One. This neocon Zionist warmonger, Mark Levin. But let's focus on Schoen and what he says about Jack Smith.
And weaponization of the Justice Department that we've spoken about. Jack Smith has no standing whatsoever in this case anymore. One of the ironies is, of course, she found that his appointment was unconstitutional under the Appointments Clause and under the Appropriations Clause under Article 1, Section 9. And now they're spending money for him to appear, our money, for him to appear again in a case in which he has no standing. But you're 100% right. Look, he wants to issue this report under Section 600.8C of the Special Counsel regulations. He doesn't exist based on her order. So the special counsel regulations would never be triggered. And Under Section 600.8c, it's only supposed to be issued after the conclusion of the matter. That matter has not concluded. Now, you know, their response in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit is, well, on second thought, we won't publicly expose the report on the Florida case. We will about the D.C. case, and we'll show the Florida case report to certain senators and congressmen. Well, we know where that's going to end up. This reminds me of Jack Smith's move in the D.C. court after the Fisher case and the obstruction charges should have been thrown out. And he came in with a superseding indictment. It wasn't supposed to include any official acts and so on. But he again engages in a speaking narrative to try to pollute the public with terrible things about Donald Trump that he made up, that has never been tested in any kind of cross-examination. And he put that out there. That's what he wants to do again. And the irony of that is they insist on a gag order for President Trump in each of these cases.
So Jack Smith has no standing, right? He's already gone. He's already resigned from the DOJ, we've heard. Jack Smith never had standing. He was not a properly appointed special counsel. And yet, his reports went out to the public. We got stories about court cases. People spent 2 years reading every document that could ever possibly come out. And I mean, it's a big fat zero, obviously. I guess there was something to be learned throughout this whole time. Many of the cases against Trump, it's always worth remembering, are fully reliant on the 14th Amendment, which is not properly ratified. So the entire thing, again, every element of it, some part of each element, as we went through the other day in Donald Trump's Truth Social post, is fake and illegitimate. And if you can see that all of the elements are fake and illegitimate, and you're still going to call the main thing real because the state is doing it, then all you're doing is groveling. All you're doing is groveling. Because what you're actually saying is the state can do whatever it wants, even if it lies to me the whole time. And people in MAGA did that while saying they were fighting the deep state, and calling people crazy for questioning it, by the way. Can't stand up to your government because you are lower than them. You are a subject. The government is your king. The state is your God. Grovel. Okay? That's what it is to take a case where every single element of it is obviously bullshit, counter to the law, counter to the Constitution, totally unsubstantiated, being exploited for political purposes, being adjudicated in the media. If you can't at that point stand up and say, this case is fake, this is illegitimate, no one should treat this with any level of seriousness, mock it, make sure those around you mock it. Do not let any of the people trying to get away with this think they have any chance, and let them know we are looking at them the whole time. And instead, people try to have discussions where they express their opinions about how the law is being used and how it, may be appropriate in this particular case. Play secret white hats and black hats. Ooh. What could be more fun than secret white hats and black hats? Yeah, let me play. It's also silly. Jack Smith, never real. E. Jean Carroll, never real. Stormy Daniels, never real. Manhattan real estate business fraud charges, never real. What do we have? Fulton County, Georgia. Please let it be real. It's unfortunate that it's so fake, because if it was real, we would actually have a venue to show the country the election problems. Make Fonnie Willis great again. Make Fonnie Willis real again. Can't do it. We can't do it. It's too fake, sir. It can't be brought back to life. No one will believe it. Yes, they will. I promise you, yes, they will. People love to believe things if it can make them mad at the television in a righteous manner. Let us pause briefly. Snowcat Operator, a gifted subscription. You're awesome with that, man. Thank you. Okay, I think that I am in the ballpark on being caught up. Italian Stellini says, maybe an unpopular opinion on this chat, but Bondi is greater than Gates. To the extent any of it is real, I would not agree with you, but I think that that's a fine opinion to have to the extent that it's real. It's important to remember that it's not real. Yeah, you know, you can like her. Anybody can like anybody. It's great. Let's take a look at Pam Bondi, actually, because I want to make a point about shifty old Schiff here and the sham January 6th committee, because it is a sham. It was a sham the whole time. It was improperly formed, not according to the House rules. There was never a ranking member from the minority party, and the minority leader did not choose the members. Nancy Pelosi chose Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney to be on her little team. Now, Adam Kinzinger, I think, is a dark horse for you know, one of those like dark horse, totally under control, secret white hat guys. I think that would be hilarious. And then I guess, hey, man, Cheney, who knows? Maybe she's bringing down pops. I actually kind of think that might be true about George W. Bush. But let us continue. So this is Shifty today talking about Liz Cheney.
Sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one
Based
has
on
asked
what you
me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a
The
hypothetical.
president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president
Liz.
has
We're
called-
also
the
worried about
president-
Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
president has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this-
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi,
The
please
crime rate
answer
in
my
California
questions.
right now
You
is
are
through
aware,
the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your
my-
robberies
Ms.
are
Bondi,
87%
my
higher
question-
than the national
my question
average.
is this.
That's what I
My
want to
question
be
is
focused
this.
on,
Do
Senator.
you have the
if I'm
power to
confirmed
say
as
no to the
Attorney
president?
General.
So, you know, I think it's wonderful that she is overriding this clown show by speaking over Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff is not a legitimate senator. Adam Schiff should be tried for treason, assuming that what we know is true. And after 8 years or 9 years of following this stuff, I think that there's people, and by the way, that's not for me, that's for the community following Adam Schiff very closely. And I'm sure some have followed him far longer than that. But I think that there is a broad and well-vetted body of knowledge that suggests Adam Schiff is clearly a traitor to the United States of America, to the extent that he even believes the United States is his country, and I'm not sure that he does. So she has no reason to respect him. There's none of them who can prove their legitimacy in office unless there is something I am missing, okay? If we are going back to the way that senators used to be named to office, if we are participating in the original form of the Constitution, then that's just fine. The Senate, as far as I'm concerned, is a nullity. I don't care about the Senate at all. So she does not need to respect them. He is asking her if she is aware of a factual predicate for Liz Cheney to be investigated or tried for her participation in the January 6th committee. And I think that he probably wanted to have her say something about the destruction of evidence. And there was a point at which, and I can't remember who it was, there was a point at which, and maybe it was Schiff, but not in that clip, where it was beginning to seem like they were going to start accusing the Trump administration of destroying evidence from J6 or from the J6 committee. That is pretty far-fetched. Maybe this is them trying to find someone to go after for information they weren't able to access. There was a lot of information unable to be accessed because it was, in my mind, tied up by people doing better things with it than lying to the American public with their congressional mouthpiece, using Congress as kind of their sock puppet. Oh, look, the Congress is saying all these lies to the American public. Congressmen are saying these things through the speech and debate clause, so it's okay to lie to the American public. Pam Bondi also had this great moment right here. And remember, think of this as not entirely real, because it's not.
Right about to that. Speak against, yeah, they keep on trying to get her to do some work against Patel.
I want to get to something, and perhaps this is kind of touching on what you mean. The back and forth between.
And for the background, the clip's not perfectly clipped. So he's talking about how the Pam Bondi hearing was used at many points to attempt to go after Kash Patel, who is the nominee for the director of the FBI. And the idea being that he has some sort of enemies list, painting the incoming administration as, you know, the authoritarian, dictatorial administrations of lore that we've been raised to believe could never happen in this country. And they're going to sell. It could never happen in this country until right now. In fact, Donald Trump's doing it, even though we know what the last 4 years have been like, and we have seen on display exactly what that sort of regime would look like.
Between Democrat Senator Dick Blumenthal and Pam Bondi. Watch this.
I have to say also, really troubled, deeply disturbed by some of your responses and non-responses to the question that you've been asked today. You have to be able to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. You dodged that question when you were asked directly by Senator Durbin. You have to be able to say that January 6th insurrectionists who committed violence shouldn't be pardoned.
You said that I have to sit up here and say these things. No, I don't. I sit up here and speak the truth. I'm not going to sit up here and say anything that I need to say to get confirmed by this body. I don't have to say anything. I will answer the questions to the best of my ability.
That's what it is. She doesn't have to say anything. And they've used this tactic for many, many years. Like, you are unqualified for work in this government unless you agree to XYZ. These are certain litmus tests, and that's fine, right? But they're proposing these be litmus tests for people at home. The American people want you to declare in your public testimony that XYZ, that Joe Biden really won a legitimate United States of America election for president. Well, no, he didn't. He didn't win a real election. There wasn't a real election. If an election is fake and all the people participating in the election know that it's fake, it's not an election. And I made this point many times last year. If the people setting up and running the election know it's fake, if the candidates in the election know that it's fake, and the people voting in the election know that it's fake, then it's not an election. Everybody involved knows it's not an election. What they are all doing is simulating an election, okay? With whatever elements of reality are required to move into that, to put aside the disbelief and say, yep, I guess we really did it. I mean, we all faked this thing together. That makes it real, right? I guess by some standards that would make it real, but everyone's faking it. It would be like if the surpriser and the surprised and all the guests all knew that the surprise had been broken and no surprise would be there. They all knew that now they're just attending Frank's birthday party. If they still went through with the surprise part anyway, and all tried to convince themselves it was real. At that point, would it be a surprise party, or would everyone be pantomiming a surprise party, simulating a surprise party, faking a surprise party? I would suggest it would be the latter. A real surprise party cannot be had without the surprise. A real election cannot be had if everyone involved in the election already knows it's not real. What are you supposed to say? So, Pam Bondi, I do not have to answer that question. And of course, she doesn't have to answer that question. These people, these representatives, quote unquote, the senators, are meant to be there representing the interests of their states. Do the people of their states want them asking an attorney general whether or not she accepts the results of the 2020 election? I thought we were supposed to be looking ahead. All right. All right. All right. Let's continue. So, while we are on the subject of shifty Adam Schiff, generally speaking, let us have a quick little peek at the John Ratcliffe hearing. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? There we are.
An intelligence committee misrepresented that a laptop owned by then candidate Biden's son was somehow a Russian intelligence operation, and 51 former intelligence officials used the imprimatur of IC authority to go along with that. I stood in the breach. I stood alone and told the American people the truth about that. So I think my record in terms of speaking truth to power and defending the intelligence community and its good work is very clear. And what I can assure you is those types of instances, if I'm in that position as CIA director and have to do that again, as uncomfortable as that can be, to be accused, the truth will ultimately defend itself. And I think that that intelligence will as well.
They were grilling him about whether he had the fortitude to speak truth to power. And by that, they meant, and they kept calling what the intelligence community produces truth. Will you tell Donald Trump that the intelligence community is correct all the time? Will you stand up and say, no, Mr. President, that's not how it is? Our guys over here say it's the other way. They're going to, and at one point they actually asked what about the funneling of foreign intelligence into the executive branch, and whether or not we would be respecting our allies' intelligence as they send it in to us, so that, of course, they can run the stories about we received intel from our British partners. We received intel from our Israeli partners saying that XYZ was going to happen. And so it was mixed into Donald Trump's presidential daily briefing, but he ignored that intelligence from our Israeli partners. And now look at this. We've played this story on television that says that intelligence was true. Therefore, this is the greatest intelligence failure in the history of since Watergate. And Donald Trump is whatever Donald Trump is now. He compromised our national security because of his paranoia from his first term, all the conspiracy theories he peddled and his supporters peddled. Crazy stuff. Oh, wait, speaking of crazy stuff, we also got a little QAnon mention in the so funny. In the hearings, this is Sheldon Whitehouse, I believe, senator from Rhode Island, member of a whites-only
Take a minute
private
off
club.
Senator Schiff, since I'm joking. Since he took an extra minute, I'm joking.
Yes, you can.
You wanted to say something to Senator Schiff?
No, sir. I asked if we could take a minute off Senator Schiff since Senator Whitehouse
went
took
over
an
by a
extra
minute.
minute. I was teasing.
Okay. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I wanted to come back, and I'm glad I did because I got another mark on my bingo card. QAnon came up. It's a little known fact, but the so-called
So Tom Tillis, sorry, not Whitehouse. His bingo card, he never expected QAnon to come up. He's got another mark now. So I didn't find the original comment, but amazing that they are right back to that. And who knows, maybe there will be some kind of reappearance. I know that like people in the Q community are going, are very excited about the possibility of that. I don't have much to say about that. I was not around in the first round until the very, very end. And then there were those posts that came out in 2022. It was funny. I actually remember being on, I think, the Liberty Den at the time with John and Patrick on Badlands, what is now Badlands. I don't think there was anything back then. But a Q post dropped like while we were live on air. And I thought that was really fun because I got to see how excited people got about it immediately. And I had never really experienced that. Even once I kind of started paying attention to them a little bit at the end of December, because a friend of mine was like, you know, man, maybe you really should like just take a look and see what this whole thing is about. And I've been hearing people kind of talk about it for a few months. And by then, of course, I had already realized that everyone I had listened to before was lying and that nearly everybody I knew was stone cold retarded. And so I was like, well, I better check out this new body of knowledge. I've clearly been wrong about a number of things, and I need to open myself up to all these parts of thought that aren't being introduced into the mainstream at all, aren't being introduced into whatever information bubble I'm in. And it's funny because they really protect that information bubble really hard. And I was thinking about it this morning, like a gated community. And, you know, Eric Weinstein kind of talks about it as the institutional gated narrative, and all good. I don't remember how he says it exactly. But just think of it as a gated community, right? Or whatever, a fenced in pen of some kind. There's this shield protecting this inner circle from everything outside it. And within that circle is that's the central narrative bubble. Okay. And so what we have with people in Con Inc. and many MAGA influencers, Q influencers, health influencers, etc., all of them are trying to break into that bubble because they think that's where all the attention is. And of course, that's where all the money is. And, you know, people who believe that they are actually trying to communicate something that the world is missing and trying to do some good in the world, a lot of them think that that's the only place good can be done. And that in itself is unfortunate and a separate problem. But what I'm suggesting is that rather than try to inhabit the information bubble with these people, why not just claim all of the territory outside it? Because all of that territory is so much bigger than what's inside that bubble. And what's inside that bubble is almost entirely false. Okay. There are details about events that resemble the truth in some fashion, enough to connect them in a plausible way to reality prime. But even most of that is totally false or misrepresented, and all the meaning meant to be drawn from it is clearly false and or immoral. Basically, everything that is right exists outside that space. And rather than other people claiming all that space, they instead just stay right outside the fence, like all those partygoers watching the reality show being filmed, hoping that they can be in there instead of simply partying. Can we be part of the show too, please? So lame. It's always how it was too, man. And it always looks so desperate. Oh, so desperate. It would be like when big celebrities would be sitting there and just like 20 women just like hoping that they can get in and talk to Leo. So silly. So silly. I hope, people live and learn. Okay. Oh, I just closed something that I realized now I need it open. Okay, so let me make sure. So we've done Ratcliffe, we've done Shifty. And yeah, we did that one. Okay. So we're good on those clips. Wonderful. All right. So yeah, just to make that point one final time. Okay. What we have are two sides who know that in part or in whole, they are putting on a display to shift public opinion, and they are primarily conscious of that. The people in these scenes are far more like the members, the cast members of the reality show filming a scene than they are like partygoers participating in a real thing at a real level. The people actually in the crowd partying, sitting over at their table, being served by a real waiter, knowing that none of them will ever be filmed by the film crew. Their experience of partying is, if not totally real, at least real relative to the other. And that is what's happening. That's what's happening in these congressional hearings, these Senate hearings. And it is really important that we don't actually mistake these things, okay? Because it's not that thing that's happening in reality, naturally, organically, spontaneously. It's not that thing. Even if they are improvising as they go through some of these remarks, and even if they don't know what the other person is going to say, they still know their strategy. They have, at least given some thought to how they might, to what the response might be, and then how they will reply. Their script from the senator level, they're certainly scripting the interaction that they plan to have and then trying to execute it. And they're doing it to make viral content, which is the same reason the reality show cast members are filming their scenes. It's a reality show. This one is a soap opera. The NFL is a reality show. It is a sports reality show. The California fire coverage is a reality show. It is a horror story and action movie reality show. From the top level, it is just a demolition event in a construction project. And of course, a mass psychological, intentionally inflicted trauma event from which they intend to reap the rewards. That's what it looks like from the top level. It does not look like your neighbor suffering. That's what it looks like from your level, if indeed your neighbor is suffering. Okay? There's nothing to you that it looks like for someone in the next town over's neighbor to be suffering. That's just something you imagine with your own mind about what it would be like if it was you and it was your neighbor suffering. And, you can experience some level of empathy, but you got no knowledge or evidence or testimony or experience to say that what's happening over there is real. That's not even possible. All right. Funny interaction in chat. PJ Corrigan comes in. He says, sorry, I'm late. What did I miss? And Snowcat says he was saying it's all fake. Yeah, I guess it do be like that, though. It do be do. Yeah, there's not much I can do about that, unfortunately, right now with where we are in this whole information war thing. Because you got to understand that the goal right now is to, the goal right now is to get everybody back on the same page at one time. And that's what the traumatic events are for. The news is trying to reestablish trust all the time by making you feel that you are being attacked by the other side within the controlled opposition dynamic. And then they are embodying the discontent of the people and helping lead the people forward to this victory that we will experience collectively. Fox News goes out there and says, it was a good day for Pete Hegseth. They play some clips of Pete slamming idiot Mazie Hirono or idiot Liz Warren or idiot Tammy Baldwin, any of these idiots. It's funny, Bannon yesterday was like, in that interview, he was like, man, there sure do seem to be a lot of women on the Armed Services Committee, don't there? And it's true. There do seem to be a lot of women. Why? Well, because being on the Armed Services Committee for a woman gives her gravitas when talking about military matters that she otherwise just would not have. So that's just one of the tricks of the trade, you know? And interesting that Bannon points that out. But they're all yelling at Hegseth. Hegseth is able to slam them. He looks like the smart, cool, composed, with it, very on task, knows his purpose kind of guy. Apologies, I have this little tickle in my throat. And he makes the women on the Armed Services Committee look terrible. So Fox News shows you a bunch of these clips. You're like, yeah, go us, we're winning. And then they say it was a good day for Pete Hegseth today. And they have guests on that say it was a good day for Pete Hegseth today. And then on the other channel, they're having interactions with the Democrat senators and Pete Hegseth where they lay down the case against Pete Hegseth. All the sexual assault allegations and the drinking allegations and claims about you're not going to allow women to be in combat positions. And then they have guests on that say, yeah, you know, they make some great points about how awful Pete Hegseth is, but, you know, they just didn't get the job done. Ultimately, they didn't really leave a dent. And now we have this awful person going through to enact Trump's agenda, an agenda he didn't even say he'll oppose. So total nonsense, but they want to know that you are on their side and they are on your side. They are the voice of you, except they're not the voice of you. They are speaking the voice of the regime back to you. Why are they so happily telling you these things about Pete Hegseth or the things about our landslide election, etc.? Well, there are certain parts of this narrative that Donald Trump may well be on board with that are still being used as an information operation by the conning neocon establishment. And so Donald Trump then has two choices. Does he oppose them in the run-up, or does he support it in part so that they can take the lead, they can make the big deal out of it, then nothing happens, and Donald Trump just goes on his merry way, as does everyone else, while the conning side leaves themselves totally exposed, once again grouped together for anyone cognizant enough to recognize it and stop denying it on the basis that they're the favorite TV characters. They are running an information operation. It's not to be our friends. They are yelling at one another in order to produce viral content in order to support the central narrative. And it's funny because all of the reality show content in the world is the same thing. They're filming it to produce viral content to support the regime's agenda in the real world, to create an American populace that actually believes in the world as it's presented on television, and because of those beliefs will interact with the real world in reality prime according to the incentives of the false reality layer that they have accepted. All right? They'll be going in the opposite direction relative to reality prime, but the correct direction relative to the false reality as it's been presented to them, which is why they are constantly indoctrinated and it's constantly reaffirmed. This is the way the world is. This is the incentive structure. This is the punishment structure. Conform to this and obey, and you will be rewarded, or at least your suffering will be diminished. If you can help us, if you can put all your effort into it and do something no one else can do, well, then you'll get rewarded massively. And all that will require is trading your soul. So what's happening is that they are filming a reality show. And we've talked about this from the Donald Trump level as well. And, you know, recognizing it is the only way to potentially get out of it. And if we want to have like a real government with a say in a real government, then we have to get out of it. Otherwise, all of it's fake, right? The money's fake. The institutions are totally illegitimate. Most of what the federal government pays for is not constitutionally part of the federal government, which is fine because, of course, they're not using real money. It's a farce through and through. And on some level, everyone engaged in the farce knows it. All we have to do is stop. If people stopped watching the reality show that was being filmed in the club, the reality show would no longer be filmed in the club. And what's happening in the club would then only be a party environment. The only people there who would be faking partying would be doing it in a decentralized fashion that is, you know, self-initiated to whatever degree it's not society's influence. You know, you can always play chicken and egg on that. When you are in a zero trust, fog of war, unreliable information only environment, the response can only be extreme skepticism, not total acceptance of the official story and the slogans until you replace it with a better story, fully fleshed out, that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. That is insane. I had a person yesterday jump in the chat, a fine guy who I've interacted with before, and I'm not trying to blow him up here, okay? But it was totally irrational, the conversation I was having. We were talking about old maps. There are some incredible old maps that show Greenland right where the North Pole is, okay? It's like it's some kind of important place or something. Different old maps. Not exactly the same as one another. Certainly not the same as the map is now, and certainly the map now has probably changed from the map in the 1970s. Hold on, let me see if I can find this hilarious Owen Benjamin clip. Hold for processing. I know I have this from yesterday. This dude is so funny sometimes. And I'm not always on the same page as him, but I really enjoy him. And we have very similar past experiences. So I would enjoy one day talking to him. He's clearly, far more famous than I am, obviously. So not
listening
familiar
to
on
a general talk about this. And apparently the reason Greenland is very important is because of the strategic location. And it's very clear on a flat earth map. Oh, I'm sorry. That's very offensive to people these days. So let's just look at the UN map because it's the same map.
Isn't that incredible? So his flat earth map that he was about to show is the same as the UN map. And so I put up this map yesterday. I actually should try to remember at some point what this map is actually called, but I always forget. And someone in the chat, I'm sure, will know it and say. But I find this map, first of all, let me be very clear that I find it fascinating to look at the Game of Thrones map. Okay? That's totally fictional. And I still like thinking about where all the lands are and how those might be parallels to what we deal with in today's geopolitics, right? So here's a map that has the world here. That, if I'm not mistaken, would be Australia. And this is the ice wall and then all of this, area beyond. Does me finding this map fascinating mean that I believe this is what the world looks like? There doesn't have to be any connection between those two things at all. This map is fascinating to look at. This map shows the world to the extent that this map shows any world. It would show a world that does not exist to the knowledge of most people. That is not how most people believe the map of the world looks. Okay. And if you said, is this a map of the world? They would say, wait, you mean our world? Well, no, that's clearly not a map of our world. I know what a map of our world looks like, and it's not like that. Let me see if I can find a map of the world. What is it? 2025. So let's look 1975. (1975) political world map. Let's see if it looks a little different. And you would have to accept, of course, that this hasn't been changed since then, and there's no way to know that that's true. But does it look different than the way things are displayed today? Certainly some of the names on the countries will be different, but is the way the world is laid out different? I mean, that's pretty well aligned with what we've become accustomed to over the years. And we are told that this is what the scientists say the world actually looks like. We've mapped the entire thing now. We know it's like this. I mean, it's not true that we've mapped the entire thing, I don't believe. What about this whole part down here? Is that all mapped? No, just there's no world treaties on anything except for Antarctica. They all agree about that. In itself, by the way, that is suggestive of the truth and reality of a one world global government. Oh, I know they've just all agreed about Antarctica because it's so important. Well, why then? Why is it so important? Soviet Union, you will see right here. So, clearly countries are different, if not the whole lines on the maps. Why is it so important down there? I hope one day they'll let us know. To be clear, it's not because the map looks like the last picture I sent. If you look at that, then you're a conspiracy theorist. You are a conspiracy theorist to look at old maps. So I was showing a series of old maps and people got very, very upset. What are you talking about? Flat Earth? There's no sense in that. I don't know if there's sense in it or not. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about old maps. And if you want to talk about that, I will talk about that. But right now I'm talking about old maps. Okay. If you want to talk about that, the first thing I would say is, well, hey, here's the problem. If we apply any of the sorts of standards of proof you usually call for, then the science itself breaks down when it is first inspected and makes a number of assumptions in order to create the heliocentric worldview it has created and all of the corresponding facts of that internally consistent system for which, of course, there is no evidence. Okay? It happens to align with what we experience. That doesn't make it the only explanation of what we experience. Its alignment with what we experience does not make it true. It makes it a plausible explanation among other plausible explanations. If there is no reason above that to choose that one over another one, well, then it's just one among a series of explanations. That's not proof of something. Okay? So he said, oh, there's no sense in that. Okay, well, here's the thing. You have no proof of the thing you believe it is, but you also believe that all the sense around this issue exists only on the side that believes as you do, despite you knowing that you don't know anything about the subject, and neither does anyone on your side. So you're saying that all the sense in this conversation is on the side of people who admittedly don't know anything about the subject and have never examined the other side and are gleefully protecting an effort coming from the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world to make sure no one ever talks about that one thing and is taken seriously. How many other issues are like that? And I would suggest there's quite a few of them, most particularly World War II and the Civil War. All right. People admit they know virtually nothing about one side of the argument, but they say there's no sense on the other side. Only stupid and crazy people look at that, or racists and homophobes and whatever. You got to be a bigot. You got to be angry. You got to be crazy. You got to be something to look at that other side. Stay over here where we have a complete explanation for all of it that we nonetheless have absolutely no way of proving true and cannot explain ourselves. But for certain, someone else understands it. And pointing this out had no impact whatsoever. No impact whatsoever. He was like, well, you know, it's awfully cynical being this skeptical about things. I get it that some things are fake, but you can't just go around saying they're all fake. That's irresponsible. That shows a level of cynicism that borders on toxic. Wait, what is that? What's that? Like your idea that all the sense exists on the side of people who knowingly and admittedly don't know anything about a subject. And me pointing that out is proof of my negative character traits. I'm being cynical and negative and toxic because I'm the rational person in the conversation. That, I mean, first of all, that's just obviously gaslighting, but to the extent that they actually believe it, and they 100% do, that is a total inversion within the false reality. That is abject lunacy to believe that you are the sensible and rational one, that the other person then is ascribed a series of negative character traits because you're certain that the only sense in a conversation exists on the side of people who don't know anything at all, except every one of their beliefs from authority, can't even explain those beliefs, and are sure that they're true because someone must have checked without actually checking to see whether the person checked. What's a person supposed to do about that? Okay. Where are we now? Where are we now? Half past. Half past. It's funny doing these live streams so much now. There are never any questions or comments from any of you in the Substack. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the Rumble chat, and I hope that I am doing a fair enough job of that. Brain Strain again says he's weaning his mom off Fox. She picked Newsmax as her new fave. Well, people will arrive when they are ready. This is what I say to people if you're trying to get them to explore my show, okay? If they're starting to wake up and you're like, I know this person really wants to take this on and get into it, Don't start them right now. All right. Figure out what issue caused them to wake up. Like if they had enough about immigration or the Afghan war or something, okay, you can go back and find old episodes from that time when those were the big issues, talking about those things. And I think that it would probably be, and first of all, you know that my thinking has advanced in major ways over the last 4 years. So not only am I operating, I think, on a simpler level in terms of the way we talk about these things, but the subjects are covered and the weird quirks about those subjects are covered as well. Let me see if I can find, I would really like to find, for instance, the first time I talked about the slave trade on our southern border. I was talking about that in 2022. Yeah, I would say, sometime in early to mid 2022, there was the let's just try this one. I remember September 16th, 2022, for instance, that episode called Slava Vineyard. That was about illegal aliens are not just here to have their labor exploited. It's also for their political power. And so that is when Ron DeSantis was sending illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard to make a big television show about how based and red-pilled he was during what would have been his initial 2022 governor's race. Donald Trump made that happen 4 years earlier by plucking him out of Congress and sticking him in the Florida governorship when it was supposed to be Andrew Wiggum. Is that his name? Andrew Wiggum? No, is that a basketball player? Gosh, man. Florida governor candidate Andrew Crackhead. Let me see what it says. Gillum. Gosh, Andrew Wiggum is an NBA player. So it would have been Andrew Gillum. That's who it was supposed to be. That's who the Union Party wanted. He was going to serve his 3 or 4 years. He was going to be the one locking down Florida during COVID instead of Ron DeSantis, who did in fact lock Florida down. And then between these blatant displays of con ink grifting and Andrew Gillum's gay meth hotel room experience, Ron would have sailed easily into the Florida governor's office and then immediately announced his candidacy for 2024. They were on it. They were pushing Ron DeSantis for president. The info op was already set up from January 2022. All right. We talked about that when the DeSantis op was going on. But you can go back that far and hear me talking about the slave trade back then. And I think it's important sometimes, not only because it starts further back, but because it gives people the opportunity to see, okay, there actually were people talking about this stuff way back then. It's not true that the nation has just started finding these things out. They didn't just become reality and then the news reports on it, because it is really critical to understand that the news, even if it's not lying about a particular instance in all its aspects, when it's finally doing the limited hangout, when that information from outside breaks into the central narrative bubble and the central narrative has to respond, it's important to know that they had easy access to that information before, if only they were looking in the right places. Now, I'm not sure that, an 80-year-old woman is going to want to take on that task. So I don't know how old your mother is. Maybe she's not the perfect example of who this technique should be used with. But if someone's 35 and they're like, okay, all right, that's all bullshit. I see it's all bullshit. Started back 6 months, a year, Let them hear me talk about what the fake election was going to be rather than talking about how our election's fake, even though they can't even contemplate something like those dirty maggots claiming that the election Trump won is nonetheless a fake election. Yes, use the time aspect to your benefit. So, okay, we're in pretty good shape, I think. So we have congressional hearings as a reality show. We have Jack Smith's special counsel. Totally fake. Totally fake. Start to finish, totally fake. Very clear Jack Smith did not have standing. Does not have standing now. Everybody knows he does not have standing now. Proceedings are still ongoing, at least in terms of how they're being communicated to the public. Who's doing all that? And he never had standing from the beginning. So I ask you again, who's doing all that? But that's not all. Let's, we heard Ratcliffe mention the Hunter Biden laptop and the op behind that laptop and the people who lied about that laptop in official settings, people from the intelligence community who lied about that laptop in official settings, and in the letter from 51 former intelligence officials. Let's check in with Hunter Biden. Now, look at this absolute devastation in these pictures that look to be created by AI. You can tell me that that's real if you like. There's no reason why this has to be real. These pictures of total burnage. None of this has to be real. Just to be clear, I'm not saying it's fake. I'm just saying none of it has to be real. It doesn't look particularly real. You don't know under what conditions these pictures were taken. Where's all the drone footage of the California wildfires? There hasn't been too much of that, has there? Strange. So this is the New York Post from today. Hunter Biden artworks worth millions of dollars destroyed in LA fires. Okay. Now, Hunter Biden, he was doing his artwork out there in California while he was just hanging out, going through his trials and tribulations as his wee-wee was being exposed. I have no doubt that the Hunter Biden laptop contains within it a hard drive with evidence, a massive stockpile of evidence showing that the Bidens are, if not the, then one of the most corrupt families in American political history, or the best possible informants the U.S. government could ever imagine. I don't think that's the case, but if it is, hey, cheers to our boy Blue. Was Hunter Biden the grittiest James Bond of all time? Gosh, that would be funny. I don't think it's true. Would be funny. I suggest, if you want to know about all the claims in that laptop, you go see the excellent report compiled by the Marco Polo research team, the report on the Biden laptop. It is, it displays a mass of political corruption that normies cannot wrap their heads around, which is why they don't look at it. Okay. Massive, massive corruption involving far, far more than the Bidens, and far, far, far more than Hunter doing drugs, getting hookers, having inappropriate relations with family members, or, you know, like if you're, it's brother's, dead brother's wife, weird enough. Okay. And then those various forms of corruption, it's a big web, a big net, and they've caught a lot in it. Hunter Biden artworks destroyed worth millions of dollars. A trove of nearly 200 artworks by Hunter has been destroyed. One of the casualties of the wildfires ravaging LA. The controversial art had been stored near the Palisades home of Hunter's Hollywood attorney, Kevin Morris, his sugar brother, this man right here, valued at millions of dollars, a source close to the Biden family said. Right? So Hunter was selling his weird artworks. They were very weird. They did not look like one another. A good way to know that a person isn't producing the art attributed to that person, they all look different. Okay. That's like one of those tells. And people are just like, well, you know, this is Hunter Biden's, like, these are his first artworks. He's just experimenting with his form. Sure he is. So Hunter Biden was selling fake art for like $500,000, which is just money laundering. And I'm sure that was some kind of honey trap for money launderers, and an excellent one at that. Now we are being told that his art is destroyed in a fire, so it doesn't exist anymore. So fake art used for money laundering, or at least used to illustrate stories of money laundering, no longer exists. Well, that's a lot like the Jack Smith investigation. It was presented to us as real. We saw ample evidence to assume that, to the extent the TV tells us what's happening, at least we can know this thing is happening, because everybody is participating in the reality of this thing happening the way they do around the table at the club, filming a scene of a reality show. They all did that for this, so therefore it must be true. But now the fake art is all gone. Everybody knows that it's gone. Therefore, they never require any evidence ever of the artwork being real in the first place. And then if you say what I'm saying, people are like, yeah, but that's crazy. Is it? Is it crazy to wonder that the things that were obviously fake from the beginning and said to be so from the beginning are actually fake? Is it fair to wonder that? Or do you just say, no, it was real the whole time? You were wrong then, you're wrong now. It's just like Scott Adams. No, you weren't seeing that back then. It turns out you were right, but you are also wrong now, thinking that it was fake the whole time and that you called it as such. Ah, yes. The vaccine was safe, and then it became unsafe, which made it the right decision to get it. And because it's become unsafe and it didn't do anything, now it would be the wrong decision to get it again, but it was still right at the time, courtesy of Scott Adams. And Scott Adams had another one of those, what do they call them in hockey? A 10-bell save. Is that what they call it? I remember the old Rangers announcer talking about Mike Richter. Kick save and a beaut. Darn, man. There was a really funny one. Gosh, that guy is, oh, here we are. I said instant legend status, but it actually wasn't for the Scott Adams post here. It's for the comment, the reply to Scott Adams' post. And hey, if you're out there hearing this, this bud's for you. Scott Adams says, I'll be blocking all NPCs who think every topic needs a vax reference, to which AK Messiah said, you sound vaccinated. Indeed, no one sounds more vaccinated than Scott Adams saying, please stop talking about my decision on the vaccine. No, Scott, we will never say that until you relent and say, yes, these people clearly knew what they were talking about. And not only are these people not fringe characters who are dumber than me, these people clearly have insight into something to which I have no insight. Okay? And I'm not talking about me, by the way. All of you knew exactly what to do when Scott Adams did not. And you were probably telling your family and friends because you were looking out for their lives while they called you crazy. Oh, yeah. All the sense exists on our side, not your side. No, we don't know that the thing actually works. Of course, it's experimental medicine. And no, we don't know that this disease is actually deadly. But Everybody does this. Everybody needs to do it because all the people with sense are on this side. We do what our side does. Just get down to the very bottom and say what it is. Okay? You don't do it because we do it. You don't believe it because we believe it. You don't go along with it. You can't associate with us in terms of thought or belief or action or words because you do not want to be associated with us because people like you can get kicked out of the thing for associating with people like us. It's a hate movement. It's just a hate movement. All right. Now, there are still, I hope, redeemable communists out there in the world who might one day realize they're in a hate movement. And we can say to them, hey, commie, nice going you got there. Now, I understand you're in a hate movement. It's nice to see that you've recognized that. Try to come on out of the hate movement. You don't have to stay there. They're going to hate you exactly as you've hated the people who left the hate movement before you did. Okay, but it is a hate movement. They don't want to do it because you do it. They don't want to do it because I do it. They will not adopt these beliefs, not because they're irrational or evidenced in the world. It's because then people like us will be right. Okay, and they can't stomach that. Look at Scott Adams. Desperate to have people forget that he was wrong about an issue that was pretty easy to get right. No upside, only potential downside. All of the force and leverage focused on one thing that is always wrong. Go the other direction. Just turn around and go the other direction, particularly because all the dumbest and worst people you know are going in that direction. Go the other direction. Oh, hey, are all the people telling me to do this thing wrong about everything all the time? Yes, they are. Okay. I'm going to do the opposite of what they're telling me. I mean, that is what many of us did. It's certainly what I did in Hollywood in 2020. When push came to shove in those first few weeks of the very deadly pandemic, when it was immediately obvious that if we were at war, and I believe that we were at war, and Donald Trump was kind of saying that we were at war, if we were, we would not be trying to survive that war. The goal during war is to protect your side so it survives the war and defeats the other side. And instead, we were like, well, we better figure out what these people who are attacking us want us to do, and then we should do that. When you realize it's that, it's like, oh, these people are intentionally trying to lose this war, which means that they are trying to give up on behalf of us and on behalf of the country. And that's not what we want. And you get punished for that. Punished quite a bit. Okay. Where are we? So we've got Hunter Biden fakery. The artwork never had to exist. There's no reason for it to exist now. If you asked for evidence, you would not be able to get evidence. Okay? There will never be evidence of it ever again. Somebody has Hunter Biden's artwork somewhere. Really? Whatever piece they bought, whatever piece they may have hung in their house was done through money laundering and will, be seized at some point. Maybe you'll see it in pictures. Maybe you'll see whatever piece of art is actually on that wall. It doesn't make it Hunter Biden's artwork. Things come into reality, things go out of reality. If a piece of artwork was created and then actually burned, it would have been brought into reality and then would have been brought out of reality. But you don't have proof that it was ever in reality. And now you don't need proof that it was ever taken out. The whole story began and ended. It is completed and resolved. So now it just exists as a fact of history if people choose to carry it into the future in a system capable of carrying facts into the future. And that's all it is. It is nothing more than that. And it never was anything more than that because it was only ever a story. So let's go to Elon Musk. Elon, let me see. I thought I had pulled this article up and I apologize. Hold for processing. Very brief hold for processing here, I hope. Let's start here, actually. This will work. This was kind of a response to the main story, but the initial response to the main story will always contain a reduced version of the official story in its explanation. So it's like you're killing two birds with one stone. This is the BBC from a couple days ago. TikTok says report of possible sale to Elon Musk, pure fiction. TikTok has called a report that China is considering allowing a sale of the social media company's U.S. operations to TikTok pure fiction. The firm's comments came in response to a report by Bloomberg that Chinese officials are weighing an option that could see its business in America being sold to the world's richest person if the U.S. Supreme Court upholds a ban on the app. Supreme Court justices are due to rule on a law that set a 19 January deadline for TikTok to either sell its U.S. operations or face a ban in the country. So we are 4 days away for this major event for a critical piece of social media communications infrastructure. That's how it should be thought of, by the way. It should also be thought of as in parallel to Snapchat. This is the, Facebook has VK by the Durov brothers. WhatsApp has Telegram, also by the Durov brothers. Twitter has Elon Twitter, so it has its own parallel, kind of. But there's also Truth Social and Getter and some others out there. YouTube has its parallel in Rumble, not quite all the way there, but it seems like it is positioned to advance pretty well. And we've got ChatGPT and the other AI models with a bunch of potentially uncensored AI models spinning off those. So we have this parallel. Okay. So this was the good twin, evil twin on TikTok, Snapchat. And you can also do good twin, evil twin on TikTok, though I'm not entirely sure it's necessary. People mostly hate TikTok because Donald Trump false started a Con Inc. narrative about how TikTok is Chinese, and Bannon ran parallel on that for a couple of years. Tucker is the one who publicized it. That should always be noted. But TikTok may well still be censoring in effect and in a real way, perhaps. But so is Twitter, and both of them may be controlled. Okay. What's important is the control, because the switch on the censorship, that can be flipped on or off at any time. And I believe that at some point it will be switched off, and then it'll be gangbusters. Okay. The end of censorship is the beginning of the American Renaissance immediately. That's the moment. All right. But look at this as a parallel to Snapchat. So we are replacing a piece of evil twin technology with a piece of then good twin technology. And yes, it still has a ton of problems. Okay. We're not getting rid of all the problems. Does it still read your biometrics? Of course it does. All right. It doesn't matter who takes that after that. It's weird. Okay. So it's not that all the problems have gone away. It's just that now we have clear proof that possession and control over this thing has been switched. So this is happening in 4 days. 4 days, right before the inauguration. TikTok has repeatedly said it will not sell its U.S. operation. It doesn't matter. Okay. Donald Trump did this in 2020. He had cover from the courts to say that wasn't allowed to happen. They wouldn't allow it. Well, how much leeway did our courts have to make decisions like that? Who knows what the exact case would be about, and who knows what Donald Trump simply implemented under his authority, under national emergency, in a time of war as a wartime president and commander-in-chief who did not lose an election, okay? It did not simply step off into the background. We can see in countless ways at this point. So TikTok says it won't sell for these last 4 years. We are told that none of this happened for the last 4 years. It's happening anyway. And last year, Congress, the illegitimate Congress, tried to, in illegitimate fashion, take responsibility for this by being anti-TikTok and letting the country know that they were on the side of patriotism. If people defend TikTok, well, that's defending the Chinese. And of course, they're going to try to do that with us eventually, right? And that's when we have to just stand there and be like, "Ha, okay, commie. Do we have to play this game again? You going to tell me you know what's going on in China? No, you don't. You've been following China a lot these last 4 years, huh, commie? No? Okay. Neocons, you know about this China thing, huh? We're the bad guys? Oh, yeah? Are we the ones who opened China to the world and enriched the Chinese Communist Party and destroyed our economy and our manufacturing? Oh, no, that was you guys? Okay, commie. Well, we're just going to do our thing then, okay? That's it. No arguing. No arguing. There's no reason to respect these people. There's no reason to argue with them. They don't know anything. They don't have good points to add. I don't care about their knowledge base. None of it. None of it. Until they admit all the other bullshit that they were wrong about, all the other stupid things they believed, well, then all of this maps onto reality in a way that makes far more sense and accounts for actual events that are visible in the real world rather than just their ridiculous fantasy land. So you simply let the fantasy land drift away. Oh, the film crew is leaving the club. I guess we're all just partying again, and we're not filming that scene. How about that? You could just let it go, and it goes. We can't be expected to comment on pure fiction. A TikTok spokesperson told BBC News. Good. Because you know what? They're right. Nobody's going to buy TikTok, just like nobody bought Twitter. Bloomberg reported, citing people familiar with the matter, that one possible scenario is being considered by Chinese officials. It would see Musk's X social media platform take control of TikTok's U.S. operations. So Twitter would take control of TikTok? X.com would take control of TikTok? They would combine? Oh. X did not immediately respond to the BBC. Musk is a close ally of Trump. Last month, Trump urged the Supreme Court to delay its decision until he takes office to enable him to seek a political resolution. Will they delay it? Probably not. Then his hands, nice and clean. But what happened? He did it in 2020, and the Supreme Court gave him the decision on a timeline for the narrative right now. What does that mean? What does it mean that the Supreme Court could decide something in 2020 and not give the public the decision until now? What does that mean? That they could wait 4.5 years to publicize a decision that they made in 2020. Is that possible? Yes, it's possible. Why don't we have a decision on Curling v. Raffensperger in Georgia yet? Why? That's from 2020. Why haven't we seen the full report of the Arizona election audit, the Maricopa County audit? Anyone? Anyone? Nope, no one knows. That came a week after Trump met TikTok's chief executive Shu Zichu at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. On Monday, two Democrat lawmakers, Ed Markey and Ro Khanna, also called on Congress and the president to extend the January 19th deadline. Joe Biden has no pull. Joe Biden's not a real president. Ro Khanna is being promoted lately by Elon Musk. He is being promoted by Khan Inc. This is the guy that we're supposed to find acceptable, but he's also a complete and total socialist. So why would we find him acceptable? No, pass, reject, ridiculous. During a Supreme Court hearing last week, justices appeared inclined to uphold the legislation and stick to the deadline. How about that? Whoops. No, I guess we got to do it. It's got to be right there in place before Donald Trump takes office. Chinese manipulation, First Amendment, blah, blah, blah. Okay? People who have no respect for the First Amendment do not need to be respected in their words about the First Amendment, their calls for support of the First Amendment. None of that demands respect, none whatsoever. Okay? Now, in 2022, at the beginning of 2022, what was it, March, April? So nearly 3 years ago now, we had the first inkling that Elon Musk was going to, quote unquote, buy Twitter. And immediately at that time, I said, Elon Musk is not buying Twitter because that's impossible. Because it is impossible to buy for $44 billion the greatest information weapon in the history of the world from billionaires who use it to control the world and make billions of dollars. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It would be like giving away your house for 1/zillionth of its worth. How do you calculate that? Something priceless, possessed by a multitude of powerful people and some private investors. You know, it was on the market, not manipulated at all, especially by itself. Imagine having a tool, having a stock on the market that was capable of manipulating itself and every other stock. That's what Twitter was while it was on the market. Okay, it's an information weapon developed by the DOD, run by the DOD, developed by DARPA, whatever, run by the CIA, doesn't matter. All U.S. national security and state infrastructure, all of that regime owned and operated up till some period in the recent past. So I said, well, Elon Musk is clearly going to be the face of that thing because that is a Defense Department operation that we're being told is being sold in a normal exchange facilitated by the SEC for $44 billion. Elon Musk is collecting investors. One of them just happens to be Al-Walid bin Talal, who had like $5 billion in before and has $5 billion in after, even though he was wrapped up completely by Mohammed bin Salman in 2017, his fortune seized. So there was absolutely no way that that story overall was going to be real. It was never real in part. It was never real in full. Elon Musk is the face of the Twitter operation. Maybe he is the general manager in some sense. It is his operation. I don't know that to be true, but it's possibly true. Most of what he does is report on what Twitter's doing and help to guide and formulate a public narrative operation. Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? We're going to have a look in a second, but that's what he does. And he does not own Twitter. It doesn't even make sense. Does he own some small piece of it so that he is reaping some reward by his investment of time here? Hey, maybe. What about Tesla and Starlink, other defense companies? Of course not. Same thing. Boring company. The Boring Company is what's building all the tunnels under the United States right now. What are we going to find out when all those tunnels are done? Oh, is it going to be that they were there the whole time? In some cases, yeah, that's going to be exactly it. Will it mean that he just built them now with the Boring Company? No, it'll mean that the tunnel people were right the whole time. That's what it'll mean. Okay. I'm not even a tunnel person. I can totally get down with it. I suspect there are way more tunnels than we know about. All right. We've heard about the tunnel Jews in New York. We've heard plenty about the tunnels in Israel and in Gaza. Okay. There's tunnels all over the world because trafficking systems have always existed. Okay. And cells for people hidden away have always existed. Torture chambers have always existed. Medical experimentation that no one would ever approve of up on the surface has always existed. Okay. We know that deep underground military bases do exist. I don't know what goes on down there. Okay. So I am tunnel friendly, but I'm not a tunnel person. when we know that all those tunnels were actually there the whole time because the Boring Company runs some op on it to tell us that, it doesn't mean that Elon just built them. It means that the tunnel people were right the whole time. And we have to understand that. Okay. So about a year or so ago, and maybe before that, but certainly a year ago, when they started talking about the congressional TikTok ban as part of the unipartisan compromise package, this is the big version of Mike Johnson's package, that had the TikTok ban in it. When we started talking about all those things, I said, oh, this here is the Twitter model. And you can go back on the podcast and hear me say that a year ago, at least. And then that Jeff Yass, who reportedly has $20 billion in TikTok, also has this giant chunk of DJT. Okay. So I said, hey, I think TikTok's going to be under DJT. And then I bought more shares of DJT, as one would when you're like, oh, one of the most valuable tech commodities on the planet can be owned for a lark. I'm going to get in on that at the ground floor. Now, don't take my word for it. That's what I did. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm still wrong, right? I don't know for a fact that it's going to be under there. It just is the only thing that makes sense. And when they're saying that it's going to be under Twitter, what if Twitter's under there too? I mean, Truth Social is something. It's like Twitter in ways. It's different from Twitter in ways, but it's something. Where is all this tech? Twitter has a relationship with Rumble. Truth Social has a relationship with Rumble. The Rumble Cloud does the cloud computing for Truth Social. I've been saying it on the podcast for a long time. Here we have it now, beginning to sprout. I told you when it was just a little seed, and then we can know that it's growing there under the soil, and now it's beginning to break the surface. And next week we will be finding out a great deal more about it. What does it mean that it has been there the whole time, that it has been present the whole time, and it has been present the whole time? So I mentioned Elon Musk earlier. I mentioned Steve Bannon earlier. This is where they come together yesterday. This is the National Pulse, Raheem Kassam's website. Raheem is kind of one of Steve Bannon's wingmen in the media. And of course, Steve Bannon is a media master, and I would suspect that Raheem would call him a mentor proudly. And there are a bunch of others who would say the same thing. Now, actually, you know what? Maybe I can find the video of this so that we won't have to simply read the comments. Should take me just a second here if we hold for processing. In fact, it might just be right up there at the beginning of Steve's relationship with, it pretty much is there right off the bat. All right, let's just do this. This is perfect. Here we are. The hold for processing has concluded. As soon as I put this up properly. Ah, cool. That video is not going to work that way. Well, now we're holding for processing again. What a disaster. Apologies. So, all right. So she gets right into Elon Musk.
voice in President Trump's ear, Elon Musk. You're not happy about it. Is President Trump too close to Musk?
I did, just to be, it's not that I'm not happy about it. I mean, Elon Musk, and I think I'm the first one that really built the narrative. He came in basically in the spring and early summer. And most importantly, he backed our play, which was this was going to be a MAGA plus election, a base plus these dissident moms at the school boards. And people have been trying to moderate President Trump even on the campaign trail. So number one, Elon Musk came in and totally backed kind of the populist, MAGA play. He then wrote $250 million worth of checks to back that play, not to put in TV advertising, which is extraordinary. That's not over a whole cycle. That's in 5 months. And I've said from the beginning, both in the United States, he deserves a place at the table. And in Europe, I've said, and I think Politico's covered it pretty well, is that he holds the two tactical nuclear weapons of modern politics, which is unlimited cash and a social media platform that's not just ubiquitous, but also he can deem who's heard and who's not heard. And there's not many governments in Europe that are going to withstand that. That being said, in Politico today, the piece by Messerly and Wren, I think lay it out the best. This is a new coalition, much broader than 16. This is the beginning, I think, of a 1932 FDR type realignment in American politics. And clearly, you're going to have members of that coalition that don't agree on everything. I do fundamentally disagree with some of the basics of the Mark Andreessen, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel outlook, philosophy of life and the philosophy of politics. And there's going to be clashes. But I think the Political article today is the best at summing it up. President Trump is good, particularly about people arguing, ideas, and the best idea and the best policy wins. So going forward, it's going to be quite intense. I actually think that we're winning this round, and we're winning this round pretty big. He's already backed off the H-1B visas. He's already said they got to be reformed. We say they have to be done away with. I think we'll get Elon there. And as soon as I can turn Elon Musk from a techno-feudalist to a populist nationalist, that we'll start making real progress.
If you can't turn him, do you want him out?
You can't turn, look, the bottom line, he's not going to be totally out. I mean, there's reporting today that he is going to have some access, I think, to the EOB, maybe an office over there, particularly with Doge. So he's not going to be out. Look, when you write $250 million worth of checks, when you've got, when you're that involved, when you have actually backed a ground game, you're going to have a seat at the table. I've always argued it can't be at the head of the table, and that table shouldn't be the cabinet room in the West Wing. So I'm a realist. And I've had this fight before. People, I think some folks remember back in 17, Elon and I went back and forth virtually every day about the EV tax credits, which I told him at the time, I said, people making $32,000 a year are not going to underwrite you and these venture capitalists on a company that could be worth billions and billions of dollars, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars. That was Tesla. And I won that round.
Okay, so I think that the point has been made there pretty well, and I would suggest again that everybody go ahead and have a watch of that entire, or listen to that entire interview with Steve Bannon and Politico from yesterday. Steve Bannon just said, "I can turn Elon from a tech feudalist to a populist nationalist." Has that already happened? Yes, of course, it has already happened. Okay. He's saying what he's going to do. It has already happened, obviously, with the role that Elon has, the role that Bannon has, the role that Trump has. Okay. So that's one side of it. What matters, as we talked about the other day, this convergence is coming, the tech convergence. We have all of tech attempting to jump on the Trump train. All right. And just ride it, free ride to the end, so that their version of humanity can be set up. All they have to do is outlast Donald Trump for a few years, outlast MAGA till MAGA gets bored, or till MAGA gravitates back toward the center. Hence the entire information operation from that side designed to get us to leave President Trump or at least pull President Trump back to their center so that they can keep on going. That's the choice. You want to go to techno-feudalism with these technocrats and transhumanists, or do you want to have a populist nationalist country of people who use tech as a tool, tech friendly, not tech worshiping, tech advanced, but not tech controlled? Entirely possible. Bannon lays it out. He says Elon Musk will be on board, which means he already is on board, because you don't say things like that otherwise. He's just ribbing him. He's creating narrative space for him. And I don't know if Elon has responded or will respond or what. But then the other key there is that he pulls out some particular people from that collection. Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg. Those are the people that I've been talking about throughout this time. Okay. Zuckerberg, Instagram and Facebook, censorship. And of course, we've been talking about Sundar Pichai over at Google and the, what do you call him? Which it's not Wachowski, Wojcicki sisters at YouTube. Jack Dorsey, obviously, who's gone, and the rest of them. These have been the enemies of free speech. And then you've got Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen pushing from the center right, or from, what they call kind of the mainstream. They all think that they're like these techno-libertarians who exist in their own special space, but they are just tech-friendly neocons. Okay, that's all it is. They'll talk out about war, but the way that they want to take over the world doesn't require war. They believe they have a smarter way of getting everyone in line forever. Okay. And then Andreessen is over there funding the free press, as we mentioned the other day. And I don't mean the totality of the actually free press. I mean, Barry Weiss's uniparty left Zionism site, The Free Press, where she hosts all of the writers who did the Twitter files. Okay. Which means Andreessen was primarily responsible for the Twitter files. We should understand that. He probably facilitated that. And then the release was given to him to the extent that Elon wanted to do it, which is why it would have been such a limited hangout, such a ridiculous prepackaged intelligence product that was already the substance of Fox News programming prior to it ever being the Twitter files. And then, of course, you've got Peter Thiel, who's J.D. Vance's owner and Eric Weinstein's boss for a long time and friend. And he's friends with all of these people, he and Andreessen, and their media operations combined like that. Who knows how much input Thiel has into the whole Maha thing, also trying to wear MAGA as a skin suit and take its own power. All of this coming from the tech world, and Nicole Shanahan, who worked as the girlfriend to all of these people and essentially got tech industry information through an intelligence operation that featured her as their romantic interests, at least in a story sense. And of course, Tulsi Gabbard's in there somewhere as well. And they're trying to delay Tulsi's nomination. Who knows why? The machine sure has supported Tulsi and Pete really hard. And I don't know who else. Kash Patel, of course. Kash Patel is entirely separate from them. Obviously, the two of them are Fox News characters. Kash Patel is an occasional guest, but certainly not a Fox News television character. And obviously has higher stature within the long-term project, it would seem. So what Bannon indicates is a separation between Elon Musk and those prominent, high-level, intimately involved tech bros, okay? That speaks to what his motivation is relative to theirs, and it also speaks to what Trump's motivation is relative to theirs, which supports the idea that I spoke 2 days after Donald Trump, or whatever it was. Yeah, I think 2 days after assassination event number 1, that Donald Trump's announcement of J.D. Vance as a running mate on Truth Social was ridiculous. It was useless. It was just an announcement to begin a new narrative operation required by those very tech bros and Con Inc. That's Peter Thiel's guy. Peter Thiel and what's his name? Reid Hoffman were at a billionaire confab 2 days before assassination event number 1, talking loudly about making Trump a martyr. So that's a Thursday. Saturday, the assassination event. Monday, the announcement of J.D. Vance. And then that week, they have the Republican National Committee where Donald Trump wears a pillow on the side of his face. And we all just grovel for J.D. Vance and pretend that someday he'll be a real boy. J.D. Vance, vice president. Give me a break. That's Peter Thiel's guy, and it seems pretty clear that they're losing. Very likely, hence all the public displays of J.D. Vance being led around by an animal, literally led around by a dog. Don't know what to tell you. Brain Strain again, $10. Just wanted to thank you for hosting this party. I always enjoy the chat and love hearing your takes. God bless. Thank you, Brain Strain again. God bless you. PJ Corrigan says, Bitcoin query for you. Have you seen the NSA paper from 95? How to make a mint? Between that and the fact that Bitcoin uses, or that BTC uses SHA-256, it makes me suspect that it's an NSA creation. I can't get past that. Well, you don't have to get past it. It works or it doesn't work. It's a tool in the world or it's not a tool. It doesn't matter who created it. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Lots of people's evil little hands have been all over everything that we can ever love or trust about this world virtually. You know what I mean? You don't have to trust the things of the world. You trust God. You make your best decisions about what to do with the things in the world. It is not asking for your trust. If you want to abstain from it in a informed and educated manner and abstain. You'll be right or you'll be wrong. You know, I'm not going to say that I know what the ultimate truth to this is. I believe that it exhibits the qualities of a decentralized money, and a decentralized money exhibiting the proper qualities that is used in rejection of the regime's fiat currency is something that I would think would be extraordinarily valuable to the world. You could go through similar operations with any of the cryptocurrencies. If you want to argue then that cryptocurrencies are something you want to keep your hands off of, by all means, keep your hands off of them. Everyone's going to have to make their own decisions and then understand that the accountability for those decisions is yours. There's more than ample information out there for everyone to inform themselves and then come to their own conclusions. I cannot make those decisions for you, and I cannot take the responsibility for making those decisions from you. And so that's how I think about that stuff, generally speaking. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I think that anything of that level of importance at this late stage in the game is a part of a broader plan, and that plan seems to be coming together quite fine. This from Bannon is the sort of thing that fills in some gaps for me. I believe that he is speaking to our side of things. And as I've expressed numerous times on this podcast, that is a significant worry. It should be a significant worry when communists who don't know they're communists, globalists, transhumanists, technocrats, planners with tons of power and tons of money and tons of connections believe that they are responsible for getting a political candidate into office and then intend to inhabit virtually the entire administration. And people from that tech bro, globalist side of things, people from the militarized neocon side of things, and people from the Republican establishment, the Fox News side of things, the media establishment side of things, all think they've got their claws in this Trump administration. And that is what has been displayed to us with the fantasy team throughout this entire period, as I have been describing throughout this entire period. Okay. He's drafted onto his fantasy team nearly the entire cast of Fox News. At some point, it looks like these people are probably stepping onto a rug, and then that rug will be pulled out from under them. Okay. At some point, we're going to start hearing about the first firings of the new Trump administration. And if it was not the Fox News characters, I would be shocked. And then, of course, we're also going to hear about how he thanks these people for their service, but that agency is part of a government bureaucracy that is being torn down and removed. Now, with those positions in an administration, traditionally in the past, they would be based on favors done. Hey, we're going to do these favors for you to help you get elected, and then you're going to give us these plush assignments once you become POTUS. Okay. And so these get handed out, and Donald Trump kind of says as he's going, look at all these people asking for handouts. Here you go. Here's your handout. Truth Social Post. How's it feel? Oh, you get to participate in the television program for a little while. How's it feel? You like it? Everybody's cheering you on. Oh no, now they're digging into your past. Oh, now you don't like it anymore. Okay, well, they weren't supposed to dig into your past, but sorry, that's just how things are now. I don't expect that our government is going to be anywhere near as big as it was then. And I think that I have ample reason to believe that. And I think that these patterns coming to completion is further proof of that. And we're going to continue seeing that as this process goes along. Now, I said that Twitter was never actually purchased by Elon Musk because that would be impossible. And of course, that is correct. And we are beginning to see what will be the proof of this process to people who are understanding the big picture enough to see through it. SEC, this is the New York Times, SEC sues Elon Musk over Twitter-related securities violations. This is from yesterday. U.S. securities regulators sued Elon Musk in federal court in Washington on Tuesday in an enforcement action arising from his $44 billion purchase of Twitter, now called X. Okay. The SEC is one of the organizations being systematically defanged. It should eventually be removed, and it will at least be made redundant if it is not removed prior. But the lawsuit against Mr. Musk, who has become a close advisor to President-elect Donald J. Trump, is likely to be one of the more contentious final acts of the SEC under Gary Gensler, its departing chair. It could also be undercut in just a few days when Mr. Trump appoints new leadership to take charge of the regulator. The SEC contends that in buying Twitter in 2022, Mr. Musk violated securities laws by amassing a large stock position in the social media company without filing the proper notification. The complaint said that he had waited 11 days before filing the required disclosure with the SEC. The regulatory filings are required so investors in the marketplace can monitor the moves of large investors and potential takeover bids. Because Mr. Musk did not disclose his position, he was able to continue buying Twitter stock at an artificially low price, the SEC said in its lawsuit. The move allowed him to underpay by at least $150 million for the additional shares before he belatedly disclosed his stake, the lawsuit continued. Over the past few weeks, Mr. Musk had taunted the SEC in posts on X about the potential for filing a lawsuit. In December, he shared a letter that his lawyer, Alex Spiro, had sent to the agency, rejecting a settlement offer in the case. On Tuesday, Mr. Spiro denounced the regulator's latest filing. Today's action is an admission by the SEC that they cannot bring an actual case because Mr. Musk has done nothing wrong and everyone sees this sham for what it is. Once again, a sham, not an actual case, Mr. Spiro said in a statement. The agency had waged a multi-year campaign of harassment against Mr. Musk, but filed a single-count, ticky-tack complaint. This is the third time the SEC has gone to court with Musk. The first lawsuit during Mr. Trump's first term in office arose from inappropriate market-moving posts on social media in which Mr. Musk mused about taking his electric car company, Tesla, private. So the SEC filed in court that Twitter could be used to manipulate markets. Thumbs up. Okay, that's what I just said a minute ago. And people out there who think everything's a conspiracy theory, would say, Twitter's not used to manipulate markets. It's not a DARPA tool used to manipulate markets. They'll just attack each one of those claims individually until they have created enough doubt in front of a public, whether that be in person in a small group of people, at a conference, on the television, or on social media. And once they've called into doubt that one claim, they get to say, oh, that person's a liar. They lied about that claim. Of course, that claim and all the other claims like it happen to be true, despite them not knowing it, and you not being able to prove it to what they find to be satisfactory, but true nonetheless. And then they get to play the Scott Adams game and turn it all around again. Well, it wasn't true when you said it, at least. So they wanted him to comply to a subpoena. Doesn't have to do that. Didn't do it. Nothing's going to happen. New SEC chair coming in. It will be up to the new administration and Mr. Trump's new appointees to decide whether to back off and withdraw cases like the one against Mr. Musk. So the case is going to exist for about 5 days. It is a fake case in the first place, as just told by Mr. Spiro. And, you know, you're going to get the backstory and everything else in here. So once again, the problem is that Elon Musk, you see, he purchased Twitter. He did the impossible, purchasing Twitter for $44 billion, the greatest information weapon in the history of the world, from billionaires who use it as the greatest information weapon in the world to manipulate markets, as admitted by the SEC, and of course, control geopolitics, as admitted by the entirety of the regime, because they advertised its ability to do exactly that in the, gosh, why can't I think of what it's called right now? The Middle Eastern Uprising. Why am I unable to think of the most obvious name? People in the chat and people at home are like, it's called the Arab Spring. It's called the Arab Spring. There we go. Yes, it's called the Arab Spring. You guys all nailed it. And if you said something other than Arab Spring, well, I guess you got it wrong. So the two things I said it could do. The two things I said it was being used to do by those billionaires who were told sold it, it absolutely can do, as admitted by them. So the only thing is it possible that they would ever sell that to one of their adversaries? No, of course, that's not possible. That should be the most obvious answer in the entire world. The reason that they arrange marriages with their cousins and transsexuals is because they want to maintain bloodlines. They don't sell their power to their adversaries for money they invent. They didn't do it then. They don't do it now. They won't do it now. They won't do it ever. Okay? They've never done it. So Elon Musk did not purchase Twitter. And now the SEC is saying, well, you know, we were that whole time the proof that Elon did purchase Twitter, and your ability to look at SEC documents was the proof that Elon purchased Twitter. Except, you know, here's the thing. He didn't actually fill out those documents. So the New York Times has just now essentially told you that Elon Musk did not purchase Twitter. And the outlandish thing that I said 3 years ago that people thought, well, that can't be it, is now fully admitted by the regime. That's just QED in my book. There's nothing else to say. That case is closed. Is the TikTok case closed? How long until? If you're an investor, how much is that information worth? Okay. Now, I would suggest we have a multi-trillion-dollar problem in our country that is created by exactly that phenomenon right there. And the fact that there is a handful of people in the world looking at that phenomenon while everyone else points and laughs. And I know rich people. I know really, really rich people, and they have no idea. And, I tell them, I'm like, hey guys, in the future, you're going to lose a lot of money because of this. And they're like, well, still sounds crazy. Okay. It's crazy then. I guess it's crazy. Let's go to this really quickly. This is from Reuters, another part of the regime, one of the mouthpieces. Trump's new SEC leadership poised to kickstart crypto overhaul. Okay. So we go from SEC to SEC. Is there going to be an SEC? I don't believe that there should be. Why do we have the government regulating cryptocurrencies? Does it even make sense? No, it doesn't. If Bitcoin is what they say it is, will it answer to a governmental authority? No, it won't. Paul Atkins, Trump's crypto-friendly pick for SEC chair and former agency commissioner, is widely expected to end a crypto crackdown. Led by Biden's Democrat Securities and Exchange Commissioner, Gary Gensler, but it is unclear when the Senate will confirm him. Well, is that the illegitimate Senate? Is that the SEC that should no longer exist? Is that the SEC who was defanged by the Supreme Court? Which SEC is it we're talking about? Is that the SEC who just sued Elon Musk for a few days to explain to the public that, whoops, the Twitter purchase documents just aren't really there? Oh, there's some. Oh, they'll find us some. Oh, they'll be so cute. One thing's for sure, you can't fake a government document, except when people do that. And they do that all the time, of course. And then if government documents aren't faked, what about the studies, right? What about the studies on which decisions are based that then lead to a whole email trail suggesting that decisions were based on those studies, decisions they always wanted to make, studies that they funded to give them results so that they could make those decisions based on those studies false. Because the people doing those studies were led to make those studies say certain things. So not only are the official government documents falsified, but the email chain pretending that the implementation of the agenda is based on those documents, and the spending priorities, for instance, are based on those documents, those are falsified as well. And everybody involved knows it, but they're all just still playing along. Does the SEC have to exist? If we are told in the near future that the SEC no longer exists, will the SEC have existed this whole time? If we are told in the future that the IRS does not exist, will the IRS have existed this whole time? Now, maybe there's some husk of these agencies, some remnant kept over, people who did not work from home. Who knows how many fake employees the federal government has, just to launder money in clever new ways. Like, what's stopping them from doing these sorts of things? When I'm talking about the false reality collapsing, this is what I mean. It literally collapses in on itself, okay? It collapses conceptually. And you're like, oh, there's only one concept that explains everything that's going on here. What's that concept? Falsehood. It's fake, okay? It's fake in enough respects. People at top levels know it's fake. So to them, it's not a fire destroying your neighbor's home. It is a demolition project for the infrastructure they plan to install for the 2028 Olympics and the 2030 agenda and the smart city agenda in Los Angeles. That's how it looks from their level. Your neighbor's house burnt down. What does that even mean? And if you look at it at that level, it's gone. Okay? And then if you condense that timeline, because you can understand that the timeline in the way they think about it is already the other way. Then you catch up to them and you can see, oh, I can see what decisions they're actually working on right now. I can see what decisions they're actually thinking about right now. Well, let's go ahead and just work our way right into those decisions rather than figuring out who the Cybertruck bombers' girlfriend's uncle's boss is. Or we could just defect from the entire thing and focus on our own needs at home and the needs of our family and the needs of our community. Once you realize that it's all bullshit, then the course of action is revert to zero and then see how much you really have to be able to go outward from where you really are. It is entirely possible that all of it can be fake. In the first few days of the new administration, the SEC is expected to begin a review of these court cases and potentially freeze some litigation that does not involve allegations of fraud. Said two of the sources, some of those cases should be eventually withdrawn. What did I say the other day? What was appropriate to still be monitoring within the crypto space because cryptocurrencies can be used as vehicles of money laundering and fraud? Well, somebody's still looking at that because that, under our current structure, is kind of important. The hope is that the cryptocurrencies themselves will make it impossible to commit this sort of fraud. But the way cryptocurrencies are sold right now on like the Ethereum network and whatnot, or blockchain, I should say, there are plenty of ways to create fraud through those. That Hawk Tua girl is I think she's an info op that exists to spotlight exactly that. It was so weird. Whitney Cummings, that woke comedian who is being pitched to the mainstream as a new authoritative source. She went on Hawk Tua's podcast a few weeks ago and started talking about how based and red-pilled she is right now. She can hardly believe it. She and that little not quite porn star info op. So weird. So weird. It is critical to understand how the timing of all this works. And let's go to one last one. Hopefully I can finish it in a relatively limited amount of time. Okay, so I have talked about the paragliding go-kart incident from the very, very beginning. The paragliding go-kart incident is one of the most ridiculous things we have ever been shown. It is on par with the Afghanistan withdrawal, where they told people that this is a plane. It is the last plane leaving Kabul. People were clinging to the plane as it took off. This is the last plane out of Kabul. The last plane out of Kabul. And of course, it never was. The most ridiculous video that any of us have ever seen up until potentially the paragliding go-kart incident. And I've called it that since the very beginning, while everyone was crying and screaming and saying that we needed to glass the desert and that if we are Christians, then we need to put somebody else's religion above ours and put somebody else's country above ours. We needed to lie on their behalf because, of course, the entire scenario was built on lies. Now, it's really amazing how difficult it is to search engines, by the way, mainstream search engines seem to be getting worse by the day. They return virtually nothing at this point. The same response over and over and over again, always like in a chronological basis. So if you want a quote that someone said 2 years ago in on a subject that they've discussed numerous times, good luck with a traditional search engine. So this is the best I can find right now, although I'm certain that there are times before this Watch DJT for a second. So this is from August of 2024, and I am absolutely certain he has said this much longer ago than that.
Always demanding ceasefire. It's like incredible, like they never saw what happened. That would only give Hamas time to regroup and launch a new October 7th style attack, whether it's in a year or 2 years or 5 months or 10 years, on innocent women and children. And the hostages are largely dead. I've been saying it for a long while. If you've been watching over the last few days, Hamas is really being difficult to negotiate with. And the reason is they're dead. Not all, but almost all, a lot. And I watched the way they grabbed that one young girl by the hair and dragged her in, the way they treated her. They're not keeping people around for now 3 years. They're not going to be taking care of them for 3 years, what they've done. And they're probably saying to themselves, we blew it, because everybody wants them to negotiate. They're willing to give them anything. All they do is they want their hostages back, right? They want their hostages back. And Hamas keeps saying, oh, the hostages are gone. They're probably saying to themselves, why did we kill everybody?
And then he says, I think you're going to have very few people left. So Trump says that there aren't hostages. And of course, they're not hostages. The hostage that he mentioned is a girl from a fake assault in a video that was put out during the paragliding go-kart incident, when they were spreading stories about decapitated babies and babies in ovens that were fake stories that were told 33 years ago to the day by the George H.W. Bush people. Ben Shapiro went along with it. He's in the neocon tech bro side of the info op. Very well funded at the Daily Weimar. It's no mistake that Peter Thiel is gay. Is Mark Andreessen gay? Mark Andreessen must be gay. Seems very gay. Is Mark Andreessen gay? There is no evidence. Oh, I guess he's married. Well, he's awfully gay. And then you have Barry Weiss, who was also 100% in on they raping everybody up in here. They're cooking babies in ovens and decapitating babies from the paragliding go-kart incident. Okay? The hostages were gone. And that's 6 months ago. And he was saying it a long time before that. For a year, at least, the hostages have been gone and dead or dead. Who knows whether they were gone or dead? Today, we are told, and by the way, why are they gone or dead? Because there weren't hostages. How can you prove there weren't hostages? Well, there is no way that you can prove there ever were. And now the story is wrapped up and dusted and gone. Today, Israel and Hamas agree to Gaza ceasefire deal, officials say. New York Times. Negotiators from Israel and Hamas. Oh, no. I grabbed the wrong article. Let's just do the short version then. We'll read a couple of these updates. Negotiators have agreed to a ceasefire in Gaza after more than 15 months of devastating war, officials said on Wednesday. 15 months of devastating war. They are building the Ben Gurion Canal, and they are probably taking out occasional regime cells of terrorists and disruptors. This is what the regime sets up all over the world. I'm sure that could be happening. They are also doing demolition projects similar to Los Angeles, and all of these things are being disguised as a war. If you are Donald Trump, do you report to the world that things are being disguised as a war but are not a war? Or do you find a way to use what they are doing against them to expose what it is they are actually doing so the world does not keep heading in that path under the guise of neoconservatives dressed as MAGA supporters? Okay? Can you understand what I've been going after these last 2 years? It's this thing. The ceasefire is set to take effect immediately, according to a White House official. Its first phase will last 6 weeks, and hostages will start being released during that phase, though it was not clear when that could begin. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the deal. Its first phase will last 6 weeks, and its hostages will be released over that time. And then we will hear stories of these hostages, and we'll get video about them returning to their families. Okay? And all the while, people will be like, this is real, this is real. Oh, look at this sweet story. And it's going to give all those totally brainwashed and indoctrinated Jews in the country, and I'm not saying that with any condescending tone whatsoever. There are plenty of indoctrinated Christian Zionists in this country who will be the same way. It'll give them all some sort of closure. All the little church ladies whose pastors have spent the last 15 months lying to them, all of them will have some closure. Well, at least we can let go of that now because the hostages have been returned. Okay. The office of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, said in a statement that the number of clauses in the agreement remained unresolved, but that it was hoped that those would be sewn up later tonight. So the deal's all done, but there's still some things that aren't done, says Netanyahu, which means that the TV might have announced the deal a little early, but we'll see. Relatives and friends of Israeli hostages went out in the streets and partied. Look at them. They're so happy the hostages are out. See this, how it says, bring him home now in English? This is a very real Adidas sign right here that says, bring him home now, in a very real Israeli sign, I should say, Adidas sweatshirt that brings him home right now. This operation has been going on for a long time. This operation is directly connected to intel organizations, as we have discussed before. This is a staged photo opportunity. This might even be AI. There is no reason to believe this is not AI. This is absolutely something that could be created by AI. Continue down. Chuck Schumer says it will free hostages and reduce violence in Gaza and harm to innocent civilians. It's a good deal for everyone, the ceasefire. More pictures. Oh, we're celebrating everywhere. Here is us celebrating with red and green and white rather than with, well, there's no blue and white in that picture, only black and red and white. Huh. Wonder what it means that this part of the global Zionist regime is using red and black and white rather than their traditional blue and white or blue and yellow. So hostages. The number of hostages is said to be, where are we going to look at this? More black, red, and white. Oh gosh, I haven't been showing you the screen the whole time. Apologies for that, guys. Let me pull this up just real quickly so that you can see what it is I'm referring to by the pictures here. Of course, if you're listening at home, you would have never seen it to begin with, so it does not matter. So here we have a picture of people celebrating their friends and relatives, these hostages being returned, red, black, and white on their signs all over. Then we have the green, red, and black of Palestine here. And then we return to these signs, red, black, white, red, black, white, same organization. Bring her home now. Bring him home now. This is an info op, just like Bring Our Girls Home was, just like Me Too was, or Time's Up was. It's all the same thing. Okay, they design these ops, they get money in, they do the media thing, they hire Hollywood people, film crews, whatever it is, to make these little videos where they have the people of Israel. This is a message of the people of Israel to these hostages. You know, here's what friends are saying. They film scenes. That is what they do. They film scenes. There's not something else that they do. I wish it was a different way. But it's not a different way. It's not how we were taught it was. Instead, it's this way. Okay? It's not both ways at the same time. It's only this way. And if you want it to be the other way, then you have to strip all this thing away. Otherwise, just understand what you're interacting with is both things, which means that you take a stance of firm skepticism and do not do what the thing demands ever. Ever. Period. Never. Okay. So, peace with Hamas, the hostage release. Oh, yes. So they are striking a peace deal with Hamas. Actually, before we talk about that, let's listen to the fake president tell us what has happened here as he attempts to take credit for this thing that has gone on for 15 months and is being resolved 4 days before his fake presidency ends. I mean, how much worse could it get for these retards? Oh, and you know what? Actually, we'll preface it with this. Oh, no, let's do this one. And then we'll do that one next. I'm just, redesigning the entire outline here in my head.
Hamas and Israel have agreed to that ceasefire agreement and the whole ending the war. Those of you who have followed the negotiations can attest the road to this deal has not been easy. I've worked in foreign policy for decades. This is one of the toughest negotiations I've ever experienced. And we reached this point because of the pressure that Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Hamas's longtime leader, Sinwar, was killed. Hamas's strongest supporter, Iran, launched attacks on Israel. And those attacks failed after my administration organized a coalition of nations to stop them. And after I ordered the U.S. ships and planes to come to Israel's defense, we also shaped Israel's strong and calibrated response, destroying Iran's air defenses.
They built a pier that fell into the sea. That's the only story we have about them actually helping. In terms of the air defenses, they totally killed it with Ukraine too, huh?
But avoiding an escalatory cycle of an all-out war. The United States also organized a coalition of 20 countries to stand up to attacks by the Houthis, including their missile attacks in Israel.
Blah, blah, blah. Yes, you did so many things. That was like when George W. Bush in the 2004 campaign took credit for not allowing any terrorist attacks on American soil since 9/11. Congratulations, Joe and Kamala. Kamala talked throughout her fake campaign about how they were about to get a ceasefire in the whole Israel-Gaza thing. That never happened, did it? Nope, it happened today. What did Kamala do? Jack shit. What did any of them do? Nothing. This was a story that is now concluded. Who controlled that story the entire time? Donald Trump. Who controlled the other side of it? Benjamin Netanyahu. Huh. Because every time the TV said, and Kamala and Joe said, we're about to reach a ceasefire agreement. And Antony Blinken said, oh, we're hopeful for a ceasefire. And they make this threat or that threat or send these weapons or that weapons, or those weapons, I should say. Netanyahu was out there warmongering, keeping it going, while they were trying to get him out of office the whole time. So is Netanyahu a good guy? Is the history of Netanyahu a good guy? Nope, doesn't have to be. All it has to be is that he's our boy Bibi now. And it seems like he is our boy Bibi now. And so we're told that Israel has reached a negotiated settlement with Hamas. But we're also told that Hamas is a terrorist organization and that they all have to be killed. We need to glass the desert. We need to get each and every last one of them. And Israel should just keep going until it has killed each and every last member of Hamas, the terrorist organization. And we have known since, what was that movie? Harrison Ford. Gosh, I can't remember it. I blew it. I had a great rant going and then I blew it. Harrison Ford in the back of the plane at the very end. We don't negotiate with terrorists. No one negotiates with terrorists because you encourage more terrorism. Well, it seems like the entire global regime has negotiated with a terrorist. Israel, in fact, has negotiated with the very terrorists who supposedly want to wipe them off the map. And the people Israel openly boasts about wanting to wipe off the map. All the people like Ben Shapiro, the people in the Peter Thiel information operation, the people in the DeSantis simp operation, the people in the Con Inc. media operation. All of those people wanted to glass the desert. They wanted Israel to hunt Hamas down to the last day. They wanted the, what were their names? Benny Gantz. They wanted him to be in charge of everything. And they wanted the war to go on forever. And here we have Israel coming to terms on a peace deal with Hamas, the terrorists. So Israel has negotiated with Hamas. Is Hamas a terrorist organization if a nation state of the stature of Israel is negotiating with it? The better connection is the one in reverse. If Hamas is negotiating with Israel, and the other Middle Eastern nations are negotiating with Israel in order to normalize relations, who is recognizing which illegitimate state? There are 28 countries in the world right now who do not recognize Israel. And maybe there are more recognizing, maybe fewer will recognize in the future. But a whole lot of countries recognize Palestine as a nation. And I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm not rooting for Israel and against Palestine. That's not my business. I'm trying to figure out what the real story in geopolitics actually is so that we can understand this regime up and down and then back and forth throughout time. And that is exactly where we are ending up through this process. Okay? So Israel has negotiated with Hamas as though Hamas were a nation state, as though Palestine were a nation state. And Palestine is a nation state. And to the extent that Israel is actually negotiating something real and is going to stick around, then this, my friends, is a two-state solution, which has already existed for 4 years. And sooner or later, we'll find out that it did exist the entire time. And then everything that has happened for the last 4 years has been to show us this and get the public's perception of Israel to adjust to something that is at least in the realm of reasonable and rational and reality-based, rather than Israel is our closest ally. The Bible says we have to protect the global regime proxy state of Israel at all costs. No, that's not the biblical Israel. And they are not our greatest ally. They are not our ally of any kind whatsoever, except to the extent that we are both owned by the same people. Okay? Like, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan were allies, but they didn't own one another. One of them didn't own the other. One of them didn't control the other. They might be able to influence one another, but they were directed by an organization and part of an organization. That's what we are, okay? We are working together to the extent that the regime, the evil twin, is in control in each nation. Then we are doing the same things potentially together and in alignment on behalf of the upper organization. But that doesn't mean that one controls the other. It's just that the evil twin is strong and present in both countries. And so now we have a two-state proof in the headline of the New York Times. And it has been this way for years. And people find out that it is this way now because it is in the news now, presented as new now. And people will believe not only the news as it's presented, but also along the timeline in which it's presented, despite that timeline having no bearing on the reality of when this sort of thing actually happened and was agreed to. And it was agreed to years ago. And, you know, we saw in 2020 the negotiations that led to this point, and we saw Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. And, you know, you can run down the list of elements that were shown to us at that time and then proven to us much later on. Did Joe Biden have any role in any of this? No, of course not. Here's what Donald Trump said a week ago. We went through this on the podcast. He was down with Steve Witkoff at the press conference at Mar-a-Lago. Why do you think this happened? So that it could be clear to the world that Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff were doing this negotiation and wrapping this up. And there was no way anyone else anywhere besides Trump and MAGA could take responsibility for this. Okay?
Is that something that's likely to happen? If there's a deal even at all? We've been hearing this now for the better part of.
I know. I would say. They better be. Right. I would say that the president is exasperated. I don't want to talk for him, but look, I don't know anyone who delegates better than President Trump. He gives us a lot of authority to speak on his behalf, and he exhorts us to speak emphatically. And emphatically means you better get it. You better do this, because the alternative.
Do you think they're waiting for President Trump to take office?
No, I think they heard him loud and clear. Better get done by the inaugural.
But when you say all hell will be paid, all hell must be paid if they don't release the hostages.
Well, do I have to define it for you? Look, all hell will break out. If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is. And they should have given them back a long time. They should have never taken them. There should have never been the attack of October 7th. People forget that. But there was, and many people are.
All right, so we've heard that story. We went through that on the podcast last week, and I would again encourage everybody to listen to the press conference at Mar-a-Lago last week. So they're going to be responsible for getting the peace deal, getting the ceasefire, getting the hostages back. Okay, those were the three requirements of this narrative operation. Those were the things that were going to wrap up this story. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu had full control over those things the entire time and could feed whatever story needed to be fed to the media, while each side in the controlled opposition dynamic tried to play the story to their advantage the whole time, so that it could seem like they were guiding, they were on the side of truth, they were emotionally justified in their viewpoints, and everybody back at home would stick to the central narrative and the official story and all of the required responses for as long as the narrative played out. And now MAGA has taken that whole narrative and brought it only to Trump. Okay? It was meant to remove Netanyahu, Israel's 9/11. What does that say in interesting ways about America's 9/11? What does it say about George W. Bush? Going to find out a whole lot of interesting things about that. I don't know. I mean, the possibilities are endless. This maybe George W. Bush is the year 2000's Hunter Biden. I don't know, man. His dad is like at the top seat as far as, American politics goes, ranking with the regime. What American president ranked higher in the regime than George H.W. Bush in our lifetimes? I don't think anybody. Maybe there's somebody. I don't think so. And he made quick work of the president that he served under, so that he could essentially wear Ronald Reagan as a skin suit. Think they didn't try to pull that with Dick Cheney after 9/11? Well, son, I think we're just going to have to let Uncle Dick take over. Imagine being told that by that creepy old lunatic. Here is Donald Trump in response today. We have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. Thank you, in all caps. And then finally, he said this on Truth Social. This epic ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November, as it signaled to the entire world that my administration would seek peace and negotiate deals to ensure the safety of all Americans and our allies. I am thrilled American and Israeli hostages will be returning home to be reunited with their families and loved ones. With this deal in place, my national security team, through the efforts of Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, will continue to work closely with Israel and our allies to make sure Gaza never again becomes a terrorist safe haven. We will continue promoting peace through strength throughout the region as we build upon the momentum. Gosh, 3 hours in. I can talk my way through the rest of this. The momentum of the ceasefire to further expand the historic Abraham Accords. This is only the beginning of great things to come for America and indeed the world. It was only possible because of the election win. And Donald Trump describes for us how that election win was achieved over and over again. What is his answer? Is it ballot harvesting? Is it, what did they do with the Charlie Kirk Scott Pressler operation? They were going to leave no ballot behind. They were going to go, they were ballot chasing. That's what they were doing. They weren't just harvesting. They were chasing. They were going to get every single ballot and registration. Is that how we won? No, but they sure did take credit. And the mainstream media gave them credit. But that's not how they won. There was a public mandate achieved. That's how it was won. And that's what allows the public to understand what actually happened here with this Israeli thing ultimately, because while the explanation might be accepted today and people might realize that now the Israeli thing is over and Donald Trump is responsible for peace, the truth of that will be realized at some point in the future as we see this thing progress and as we see people begin to start adapting to the new information space and a new way of thinking. It will have been then obvious that it was like this for a long time, which is kind of how it is for them at this point, understanding that Joe Biden never received 81 million real lawful American votes. He never won a real election. He was never actually certified. He was never approved in a real way by the Congress. He was never really inaugurated. He did not serve 4 years as a president and commander-in-chief of the United States of America under the Constitution. None of that ever happened. But they did film the scene. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. That will be a public episode. On Friday, I am going to post the audio of my appearance on The Narrative with Burning Bright from Sunday night on Badlands Media. And if you haven't heard that, maybe you can replace your normal podcast listening with that episode featuring me and my good friend Burning Bright. And let me check the chat one more time. We are good there. And I think that we are caught up pretty well. So I will be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden will, of course, never be president.
Well, what? You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the rain.